Does anyone have, okay, perfect, okay. So we'll give it a few minutes. Again, I think there's some more folks who are joining us prior to my message. Okay, perfect, okay. So we'll give it a few minutes. Again, go ahead and exit out of that, Elsa. Folks. Thank you. Yeah, you can also exit out of it. It won't disrupt the stream. Sorry, there was my own echo, but thank you everyone who's in our attendee list. We are getting started in about 2 minutes. So thank you for your patience, just waiting for some other commissioners to join, and we'll get started shortly.
Hey, Chairperson Harris. I think my colleague Mike Goodnow will be joining as well. I don't know if he can be elevated to the panel just in case if we have a Q&A and he wants to chime in.
Yes, I
Okay.
see him.
Oh, great.
Elsa, can you go ahead and promote him to a panelist? There's a difference in promoting to speak and panelist. So if you can promote him to a panelist, we probably want that.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. And commissioners, just so you know, we are not in a practice session right now. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. So we're in a live session.
I wish I
Okay.
knew this
Do you
before.
see who to promote? It's Mike Goodnow.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for joining us. Mike, can you go ahead and raise your hand so then we can easily promote you to a panelist? Thank you.
Got it. And
Okay. Let me give it a few more seconds because I think people are gonna trickle in. I know that there's a lot of interest in particular in what we're discussing tonight. So I will give it a few seconds before kind of kicking us off and letting you, Chris and Mike, take over.
Sounds good. Thank you.
If there's another commissioner joining as ANC 1B, oh, they just left. Never mind. Just going to ask them to rename themselves. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is our October ANC 1B meeting. This is our info session portion, and we do have DDOT joining us. I know there is a lot of interest in the discussion tonight. So DDOT will present, Chris and Mike will present on, I believe, the 11th Street bike lane, protected bike lane. We will open it up for commissioner questions and community questions, but keep in mind, this is our info session of our meeting. This is not our official meeting. I believe Chris and Mike, I'm not sure if I saw a reply, if you can stick around for the Transportation Committee update. I believe that's first on the agenda. So we will have, if we cannot get to your question, at the point at 7 p.m. when we officially start our meeting, we will have further time during the Transportation Committee portion. So please don't fret. We will get to your questions and your comments. But Chris and Mike, I'll let you take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Let me just make sure. I believe I need access to be able to share my screen, please.
Elsa, can you click the little caret on the right-hand side of share screen and allow all panelists to share?
all right, let me know if that works for you.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Berg, and I'm a transportation planner at DDOT. I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of you before, but if I haven't met you, I hope to meet you in person, either out in the field or at a future in-person meeting. Quick apologies if you hear any thumping upstairs. My little 17-month-old is getting his energy out before bedtime. And so thank you, Chairperson Harris, for inviting me to present tonight. I presented a similar update to the ANC 1B Transportation Committee at the end of August. Again, as we continue through the design or planning and design phases of these projects, I am happy to come back and present updates and make sure that all members of the community feel like they are being heard during this process. Let me advance my slide here. Okay, so and again, quick comment. I will touch on both of these projects. I'm for the sake of time, I'm going to try to move relatively quickly through them. But again, we can stick around for the Transportation Committee Q&A. But I'll be covering two projects tonight: the 11th Street Northwest Protected Bike Lane project. I'm going to be mainly focusing on the section that kind of goes through ANC 1B. And also touch on the Vermont Avenue bike lane project. I am the main point of contact for both projects. So to step back quickly, we have a citywide transportation plan called Move DC. We update this plan every 5 years. But this plan calls for a district-wide network of safe, comfortable bicycle facilities for all ages and abilities. And we have a deadline of 2044 for that. And so Mike Goodnow here on the phone or on the line is responsible for a lot of the bike lane miles that we see already on the street. And our goal is to continue building out an equitable and a safe bikeways network. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to promote other modes of transportation in our city. Commuter trips by transit, by bicycling, by walking. That is kind of our charge from the city, and that is why we are pursuing these two projects among many others across all 8 wards. There's also a goal, a citywide goal, to reduce automobile trips, by 2032 from 43% to 25%, and we'll get into why it's so important that a robust bicycle network is part of that plan as well. And then, of course, our DC has adopted Vision Zero, and we are making efforts and strides towards eliminating pedestrian and cyclist deaths and serious injuries. And we have a long way to go, frankly, as we know, as many folks painfully know. So just a quick recap here. You'll see the Move DC Bicycle Priority Network map. In the kind of streets highlighted in yellow are existing conventional unprotected bike lanes on 11th Street. And the red section kind of in the middle of it is this section that we're going to be focusing on a lot tonight. And that is a missing link in our bikeways network. There are currently just sharrows, which aren't considered a bike facility. Bicyclists are just meant to share the road with vehicle traffic, and there's paint indicating that bicyclists can share the road. And then this section here, hopefully you all can see my cursor, is Vermont Avenue Northwest. That is a planned and funded bikeways project. And we'll kind of talk about the status of that project as well. So why is the district installing protected bike lanes? Well, from asking the population, we know that a very small percentage of cyclists feel highly confident riding in the streets along with cars. Again, an estimated 4 to 7% of the population is pretty savvy and comfortable no matter the conditions. And then there's another 5 to 9% that are somewhat confident, but would generally prefer protected, separated bicycle facilities. Well, that leaves a huge percent of people who are interested and curious about biking in the city and maybe would try it, but don't feel safe because the facilities aren't separated and they don't feel safe riding along with traffic. Thinking back to the slide before where we talked about mode shift and trying to get more people out of vehicles, out of automobiles and on bikes, it's really our charge to build out that safe all ages and abilities bicycle network. What's really going to make a difference is having a separated, protected bicycle facility for people to get to where they want to go safely. Another kind of thing to point out is, why protected bike lanes on 11th Street Northwest. Highlighted here, we see there's about 4,000 average daily vehicle trips on 11th Street in this kind of northern section, which, when you look at the FHWA's guidelines and the NACTO guidelines, that's the National Association of City Transportation Officials, the recommended facility type for that type of roadway is a buffered or protected bicycle lane. And then I wanted to call out one other thing. There's been a lot of studies done by the US DOT and the Federal Highway Administration that demonstrate and show that there are safety benefits for all road users when there are protected bicycle facilities on our roadways. There's a 53% demonstrated reduction in bicycle vehicle crashes, and then on urban two-way or two-lane undivided collectors and local roads, we see a 30% reduction in all types of crashes, including vehicle crashes. So there are traffic calming measures that come into play when we add protected bike lanes to our streets. And so when we are talking about building out a bikeways network, yes, we are trying to cater to those road users that are choosing to use bicycles or two-wheel scooters, but we are also interested in general traffic calming, pedestrian safety measures, and making sure that we're reducing speeds on our streets. Okay, quick overview. I know that there's a lot going on in this part of town. There are a lot of projects either in the planning phase or construction phase or recently constructed. So I just want to review them quickly. So this project covers a 2-mile stretch of 11th Street from L Street to Monroe Street Northwest, so downtown up to Columbia Heights. This project is going to extend off of an already completed bus priority project, which included, apart from adding a bus priority lane, it added two-way protected bike lanes, curbside protected bike lanes from Pennsylvania Avenue up to L Street. And so our goal with this project is to continue that the protection of the bike lane further north up through Columbia Heights to really make a connected, safe corridor for bicyclists. I mentioned this already, but this project would upgrade existing conventional bike lanes between L Street and S Street, and then again between Florida Avenue and Monroe Street. So there are just paint unprotected between the parked cars and the vehicle traffic. There are existing conventional bike lanes on those sections. And then again, I mentioned this, but the project goal is to fill an important gap between Vermont Avenue and Florida, where there are share markings. This project is also designed off of a couple of recent traffic safety improvement projects that one of which has been constructed at 11th and Rhode Island, and another which is currently being constructed at 11th and Vermont Avenue. Those projects were designed through a separate safety study. That project began in 2022. and these projects are getting constructed now. I know there was some confusion because there are bike elements to this. You know, those intersections are frequented by bikers, and oftentimes intersections are some of the most dangerous kind of conflict points for cyclists. And so there was road width to protect the bicycle lane, or to add a bicycle lane through those protected, or through those intersections, to add an additional layer of protection for cyclists. But they're standalone projects that, you know, of course, we are, you know, as we go forward with these projects, we'll coordinate with and make sure our designs are compatible. I also just want to point out that there's, for both of these projects, there are project pages on our new bike lanes website. The link is there, and we'll make sure to share out that URL for everyone so that they can reference. You know, our goal is to be transparent, produce or post all project materials on those pages, including timelines, PowerPoint presentations, design plans. You know, we really want to make this a one-stop shop. If you want information on a project, you can go and get it. So moving on. Now I'm going to focus on 11th Street. Just quickly before we dive in, so I want to quickly highlight kind of outside of 1B, what this 11th Street project looks like. And then we'll focus in on kind of what the challenges, unique challenges are on the stretch between Vermont Avenue and Florida Avenue. So to the south of 1B, you know, between L Street and S Street, we have more curb to curb width. And so we will, you know, our design alternatives are pretty straightforward. We can maintain parking. We can maintain, you know, center turn lanes for, you know, intersection approaches. We can protect the bike lane. We have the width to have it all, essentially. And, you know, we've done traffic analysis to ensure that that the remaining travel lanes are ample enough to handle the vehicular traffic. And similarly, north of Florida Avenue, we also have more width. And so here's a concept for the top image shows a concept for a block, let's say, where there are no streeteries. We have, again, the ability to have protected bike lanes with the buffer, parking, parallel parking on both sides, and drive lanes. And then just to demonstrate what the second concept looks like, we can also accommodate streeteries, which there are further north up in Columbia Heights. And so really what we're focusing on today is the area where we have some tough decisions to make, because the curb to curb space is much narrower at just 35 feet. So a quick kind of existing conditions right now, you know, we have curbside parking lanes on both sides. We have two one-way travel lanes, two one-lane travel lanes going north and south with share row markings on the road. And it's, you know, as many residents and folks probably know, oftentimes there's you know, there's some obstructions to those travel lanes. Right now, bicyclists are kind of in the travel lane with cars navigating these obstacles as they come. And again, our goal with adding protected bike lanes through this stretch is to increase bicyclist safety and also to make it you know, more streamlined for vehicular traffic, so that there's not, you know, conflict and uncertainty about who's where, and especially as you know, the narrow kind of right of ways being kind of negotiated in real time. Quick existing conditions overview. So this is what 11th Street looks like between Vermont Avenue on the south side and Florida Avenue on the north side. There are 2 lanes with share row bike markings. It's a collector road with full-time residential parking allowed on both sides of the street. There's a caveat. There is some 2-hour parking where, you know, zone permitted residents are exempted. let's see, I don't think there's much else to share. I've kind of mentioned this already. Yeah, so alternative one is to add protected bike lanes to maintain two-way vehicular traffic. Again, so not changing the traffic pattern, but this alternative would result in removing parking between Vermont Avenue and Florida Avenue. The second alternative, and we'll talk about some of the implications of that in future slides. The second alternative is to add protected bike lanes to convert vehicular traffic to one-way and maintain parking on one side of the street. And again, which way the vehicular traffic is limited to is kind of up for analysis. You know, what side of the street we maintain parking on if we were to go with this alternative. Again, will be kind of will require further analysis to making sure that we have the right combination of curbside access for the needs of the community. Alternative three, and I included this because, you know, where there is limited kind of curb to curb resources, curb to curb space, sometimes there's some sacrifice that might be we might need to consider some sacrifice here. So this option would include a northbound protected bike lane, so that, you know, as there's a little bit of a steep grade going up the hill, cyclists can be protected in a curbside protected bike lane, and to make sure that there's not a vehicle kind of bearing down on them behind them as they, you know, exert their extra energy to try to get up the hill. And then there would be, and then this alternative would include a southbound Sharrow, so not a significant change from the existing conditions going southbound today. And then this alternative would allow us to maintain two-way traffic, two-way vehicular traffic, and maintain one side of parking. Now, I presented this in the Transportation Committee meeting, and I know that there's some safety concerns for bicyclists, for people on bikes, especially as they make the transition from what would be a protected curbside bike lane north of Florida Avenue, coming south and then merging in with traffic through a busy intersection that has a lot of speeding issues. So we would have to take a lot of extra measures to make sure that that transition is as safe as possible, and make sure that you know, we're doing a lot of traffic calming measures. Just wanted to put that out as an option to be considered by the ANC and the community. One big caveat here is that, you know, aside or included in our considerations, you know, we consider the community's input and the ANC's input, but we also need to make sure that we do our due diligence and traffic analysis. I won't spend too much time talking about alternatives 1 and 3 because they don't have an impact on vehicular traffic and service levels. However, build alternative 2 converts 11th Street to a one-way. DOT is currently analyzing the feasibility of this alternative because it involves diversion of traffic onto other streets, and there are also other DDOT projects in the vicinity, in the area, that may also have diversion impacts. And so our traffic safety engineering team is taking a hard look at kind of what this alternative how it would impact the community. The average daily traffic, vehicle traffic is relatively low along 11th Street. So you know, there may not be it may not be a disqualifying alternative, but we need to continue and finish up that analysis before DDOT can come to the community back in good faith and say, this is an alternative that we are willing to continue pursuing. The other kind of really tough question or tough kind of reality of alternative 1 is the estimated parking removal. If we do maintain two-way traffic, that would require and install protected curbside protected bike lanes on both sides. There will be a net loss of parking between Vermont Avenue and Florida Avenue. The estimate that I've come up with is roughly 129 parking spaces. This excludes certain driveways. I understand that this comes at the sacrifice for residents that live along this stretch. I know that there are some kind of multifamily units that have parking garages. There are some alleyway access where there's parking, kind of residential parking in the rear. But I know that not everybody has that access, and I understand that any reduction, substantial reduction in parking comes at a cost and a pain. So what we're trying to do here is come up with the best alternative for a safe and equitable bicycle facility. But we want the community's input on kind of which option is most palatable and preferred by the community in the ANC. Quick timeline here, and I'll try to keep things moving. It's not always, there are a lot of details in these projects, but we are for 11th Street. We're still in the concept planning phase. Again, a lot is kind of hinging on this traffic analysis that we are, in the final stages of conducting. That will kind of inform which concepts we ultimately consider when we move to design. So we're creating the concepts, we're doing traffic analysis, doing environmental review. We have a kind of standard operating procedures for a lot of that. And then the next phase will be to develop preliminary draft designs. That would, be kind of your architectural drawings of the block by block, what the kind of the curb space would look like, the intersection treatments, everything would start to get drawn up. And in that stage is the notice of intent as well, where we publish our preliminary plans and receive public feedback and comments. And then once we've kind of worked our way through the design phase and arrive at 100% plans, we work with our construction partners and plan a construction timeline to actually enact the project in the field. So again, we would like your feedback. What are your thoughts about the alternatives? Again, our options are limited in this stretch. I wish the right of way or the curb to curb space was as wide as it is, everywhere else along this project. I really do think that this could be a, really world-class, fantastic, 2+ mile north-south, almost 3 mile north-south connection between Columbia Heights and downtown. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in getting people downtown and with the downtown revitalization plan. My number or my email is listed here. Again, I will come back and present to ANCs on this project as they request. And I know we're in talks about doing a site walk for 11th Street and for Vermont Avenue as well. So I'll quickly pivot to Vermont Avenue. Again, there's a
and I'm so sorry,
page.
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you just for 2 minutes
Sure.
or less, actually 30 seconds. Commissioner, since we have 3 minutes left in our info session portion, and Chris, if you need to go over, that is okay.
Okay.
But what I'm going to go ahead and do is right after you present, I'm going to start our official meeting, and then we'll get back to the Transportation Committee section. So if you have questions, we can have them answered there. I just want to make sure we're moving through for the sake of time. And then community members, again, as Elsa noted in the chat, this is our info section portion. If you have questions about the 11th Street protected bike lane or the Vermont Avenue protected bike lane, we will get to those in our Transportation Committee section, which is right after we kick off our official meeting. So Don't worry, we're just going to get through the presentation and then we're going to move into the regular meeting portion and we will get to everyone's questions and comments there. So thank you, Chris. Sorry.
No, I apologize. I know it took a little bit more time than I was intending to. Okay, so Vermont Avenue Northwest. Let me click back over. Okay, so we have a ANC Commission 1B resolution that requested a protected bike lane on Vermont Avenue. It is on our bicycle priority network in our Move DC 2021 plan. I'll just kind of say that like this is another scenario where we have a lot of curb to curb road width. There are currently 2 travel lanes. These are the existing conditions, 2 travel lanes in each direction with curbside park lanes on both. This does have a unique kind of median planting strip down the middle. And I know that a lot of community members take a lot of pride in maintaining and beautifying it. And so I'll touch on that briefly as well. So the proposed concept is this. Again, we have done the traffic analysis and we know that based on daily volumes, there's no risk to traffic volumes and level of service by removing 1 travel lane. And this gets us the ability to have curbside protected bike lanes and maintain parking. Again, as I mentioned before, with 2, there are benefits for, beyond for cyclists when we add protected bike lanes to the roadway. As the DOT FHWA studies have shown, there's reduction in crashes, reduction in speed. DDOT is working on doing a lot of before and after studies that kind of, include a lot of data that demonstrate the impacts of after post installation of projects. So again, this kind of corridor between 11th Street and Florida Avenue connects residents through a dense area of dense residential area to entertainment destinations like the 930 Club and Atlantis, to grocery stores, to residential areas, businesses, and it's kind of a somewhat unique, like somewhat diagonal. Most of our diagonals in DC tend to be major arterials, and so this is one diagonal street that is relatively low traffic stress, that has a lot of width, that we can and not a lot of vehicular demand, where we can add bike lanes, maintain parking, and increase, demonstrate benefits for pedestrians, for residents along the corridor. This project, we're a little further ahead. We are between our 30% design plans and our 65% design plans. We had a round of internal review, multi kind of disciplinary cross-section of DDOT teams took a look at the plans and made suggestions for improvement. We are approaching, or in the next couple of weeks, we should have 65% plans. We have coordinated with WMATA and made sure that the bus routes and bus stops are accommodated. We've done we've done a lot of we've done some community engagement through the transportation community, and we are in the stages of planning a site walk with members of the community and the transportation committee. And we've heard from folks about some concerns, and in the Q&A session, I'm happy to kind of help help the community kind of realize that this will be a net benefit for them and not kind of detract from their community. And again, this is also in our FY25 construction work plan. So we would hope to wrap up design, throughout the course of this winter and in the spring, and be ready to construct it in the summer of 2025. Again, feedback is important. We are a little bit further ahead. The design plans, give us an opportunity, or this kind of layout gives us an opportunity to consider commercial loading zones, ADA parking spaces, ride share drop off and pick up. We can really get creative and make sure that the blend of parking for this area serves the community in the best way possible. So I'll pause there. Before I pause and move on, I want to say that we are kicking off our strategic bikeways plan. We held an open house with ANC commissioners, and we're in the kind of initial phases of launching our 5-year strategic plan. There's going to be a lot of public engagement throughout the course of 2025. We are going to be in person in all 8 wards. We're going to have virtual meetings to make sure that we get to as many people as possible. We're going to be doing stakeholder outreach to make sure that as we consider what is the best, most responsible way for us to build out a better bikeways network, how we, what are the methods and means that we kind of rank and prioritize our projects to ultimately, create a world-class bikeways network. We want a lot of public engagement in that. So there is a project page on our website that kind of hosts all information regarding the strategic bikeways plan, and I invite you to take a look. As we develop and roll out more content, we will be sharing it there, as well as through other channels. Person Harris, take over.
Thank you. And I apologize. I think my Wi-Fi is acting up this evening, but it should be okay now. But can you go ahead and take this off of the screen, Chris? Thank you. For those of us, or for those who are just joining us, this is our info session portion of the evening. Normally, we do have commissioners go around to ask questions that they have, and then we get to community members. But for the sake of time, and since we're a little over, I am going to bring us into our official meeting, where then after probably about 2 minutes, then we'll get right back into transportation, talking about the 11th Street protected bike lane and the Vermont Avenue protected bike lane. So don't worry, we still will get to everyone's questions and comments. But with that, I officially call this meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Henderhan,
Present.
Commissioner Chauvin,
Present.
Commissioner Sycamore,
Present.
Commissioner Lakatos,
Present.
Commissioner Kenzik.
Present.
I'm present. Commissioner Fields,
Present.
Chair Harris is present, and Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Well, full house with 9 out of 9. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes. I would like to ask that the commission consider for commissioners of jurisdiction with respect to the bike lane conversation this evening, be given 1 extra minute per item. Instead of the 2 minutes per item for everybody, the commissioners of jurisdiction, that's 4 of us, affected by bike lanes, be given 1 extra minute per item this evening. Thank you.
That needs to be a motion then. So since there is an objection and a change, Commissioner Chauvin, please present the motion with the amendment to the agenda.
Yes, I'd like to amend the agenda that limits discussion for 2 minutes for all commissioners and guest or resident participants. And I'd like to change it to, in addition, commissioners of jurisdiction, meaning there's 4 of them this evening. It's Commissioner Harris, myself, Commissioner Sycamore, and Commissioner Lakatos have an extra minute per item for the bike lane discussion.
And are you also moving the agenda?
And I will move the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention. Was that in favor or opposed?
No, I have a motion.
Opposed for me. Thank you.
The yeas have it.
Wait, Madam Chair. Uh-oh.
We already were in the voting. So do you have another motion?
All right, no, I didn't even vote.
Sorry, your hand was up.
Carry on.
Okay. The agenda is approved. Commissioners, you have a consent agenda before you. There is a change to the consent agenda. But are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Okay. Executive officer reports, financial reports, Commissioner Lakatos.
Yes, we will be voting on the Q4 FY24 financial report at our next meeting, which will still allow us time within the Q4 deadline.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports, transportation, Commissioner Lakatos.
Yeah, so
Sorry, I just want to lay some ground rules first. Commissioner Lakatos, I apologize. Community members, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we will take you off of mute. If you do not want to speak, you can drop your questions into the Q&A and we will take those. Commissioners, if you have questions, please raise your Zoom hand. I cannot see your regular hands. It's easier for me, and then I know who to call on. So please raise your hands. Also, please be respectful and civil with each other. Everybody has their own opinions on this, and they are completely valid. I would also ask community members to do the same thing. So go ahead. Thank you, Commissioner Lakatos. Take it away.
thank you, Chair Harris. Thank you, Chris, for coming and for presenting this. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Chair Harris, I would ask, do we want to allow Chris to answer some questions? Do we want to go to I can present the resolution? How do we kind of want to?
Let's go ahead and, yeah, so because we just got off of the info session, so let's go ahead and do questions these are questions, commissioners, community members, on the slides that Chris and Mike presented. So let's keep it to questions just so we can learn more about what was presented in front of us. And then at that point, then we will get to the resolution and any Q&A and comments from there. Commissioner Lakatos, do you want to go ahead and this portion?
Sure. Yeah, sounds great. I wasn't sure how we were going to do it. I'll recognize Commissioner Henderson next, and then I also have a question after that. Everyone else.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris, and Commissioner Lakatos for shepherding the conversation today. I know there's a lot of people really interested in this, and the presentation was very helpful. So I totally understand what DDOT's trying to do here and some of the kind of balances they're trying to strike. I was curious, it sounds like there's a couple unknowns in alternative 2, what that would do for traffic flow. I think it also balances a lot of the interest, so I'm most interested in that one, I guess. Have you specifically had any conversations with neighbors and businesses about like loading and unloading and how that configuration in alternative 2 or the other alternatives would impact the residents and businesses on that corridor?
No, yeah. So I've not. I've spoken with Lulu's Wine Garden, kind of about the implications of the various alternatives and their streetery. I've not done business to business outreach yet, and that is something that I will happily do. I think understanding what our options are is an important first step. We do have a curbside management team as well that we can leverage to get creative and come up with kind of the right way to use the curb space. And if the alternative that we choose ends up removing parking along 11th Street, what is the nearest cross street where we can make sure we have commercial loading zones or pick up and drop off spaces so that businesses can go about operations as usual. And so we're, I understand that that's a very, very important aspect of kind of community outreach that needs to happen. And so, I will be taking a really close look at that in the coming weeks and beginning outreach along with our community engagement team.
Got it. Thanks. And then is there, for your timeline, just in trying to resolve those kind of issues, is there anything we should know about like voting tonight versus next month? And then I'll stop my questions there.
No, I mean, in terms of how the ANC chooses to, kind of, conduct their business, that's up to you guys. I think, the difference between removing parking and maintaining half the parking, certainly it changes. I mean, either way, we're going to be looking very closely at the curb space in the area and making sure that, if there are ADA restricted spaces, that we, make sure to account for them. If there are loading zone needs, that's like, we'll have like a ranked priority list of like what needs to happen for those remaining spaces to make sure that community needs are met. So I don't think, we're going to have to do that no matter what, most likely, because there's, we intend to improve bicycle facilities in this corridor. And so, ultimately there's probably going to be a net reduction in parking. And so either way, it's going to be important that we consider and kind of look as we move into design, look very carefully at the available curb space and make sure to maximize it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanrahan. I had one quick question, Chris. I know we've been talking about, you mentioned Vermont Avenue. You're almost, maybe in a couple of weeks, you're going to be getting those designs for like the 65%.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask, I think I sent an email about this, but just to confirm that you were willing to come and present those designs again at the Transportation Committee, so that, there's a lot of community members who I know are very interested in talking about that specifically. I just wanted to double check that. I appreciate that. I saw something in the Q&A, someone was asking about extending overnight parking for zone 1. I just wanted to add context that DDOT's curbside management team is planning on doing that in the area as a part of the U Street Performance Parking Zone. So the resident only parking, so the zone 1 restricted only areas would become 24-hour. And I'll put that NOI in the chat as well, but I'll move on to Commissioner Jones.
Hello, good evening. I have two questions. I just want to get them both out there. My first question is relaying a question I got from a neighbor. A neighbor wrote asking effectively why a two-way cycle path isn't under consideration for the full segment. Sorry, not just this one segment of 11th Street Northwest, but for the full length from Pennsylvania Avenue up to Columbia Heights. I think somebody asked this like a year or 2 years ago, and I got a good technical answer from DDOT about why DDOT had looked at that and thought that it was not appropriate for this street. But given the generally positive community and intense community use of the two-way cycle paths existing on 15th Street Northwest and 9th Street Northwest, I just wanted to hear again what some of the precise technical reasons of why DDOT didn't think it was appropriate to consider for the site. And then I'd like to hold time for another question after that, if that's all right by the chair.
I don't think in terms of space saving, when it comes down to, we'd still be looking at in this kind of narrow section, we'd still be looking at losing, parking or travel lane. There's also, like, from a functional and flow perspective, like having curbside protection on both ways makes it easier oftentimes to access, perpendicular or east-west bike lanes. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've done both in the past, and maybe not to put my good note on the spot, but I think that like having contiguous kind of design from along a corridor is really important. and switching back can sometimes be confusing. And frankly, we have curbside protected, northbound and southbound, along the corridor. And so I think from a space perspective, it makes the most sense in this segment. And also from kind of a functional safety perspective, I think it works well. I can if you want to follow with me via email, I can track down kind of a more technical answer and kind of look at the road widths and all that and kind of demonstrate how it all works out.
It sounds good. No, I appreciate that. I think my other question though is about alternative number 3, which I see involves the use of a share or a share the road arrow. At a previous meeting, I think Chris, I think it was you who was presenting about this before, and I asked whether DDOT has any reason to believe that Sharrows do anything for driver or cyclist safety. And I think I might have circulated to you, I had seen and possibly circulated a study in Chicago. So maybe it's just Chicago being weird. But a study that showed that Sharrows had no impact, or if anything, a slightly negative impact on driver cyclist conflict and cyclist injuries. So at this point, in general, is DDOT still recommending Sharrows as paint as infrastructure, and specifically painted Sharrows as infrastructure? And if so, why do they believe that works?
It's not our preferred facility type for sure. And again, if Mike is on and has any other answer, feel free to chime in.
Sure, I'll chime in when you're done.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Are you good?
No, I mean, I think there's obviously we have Sharrows throughout the city on a number of streets, and my goal would be to get curbside protected bike lanes along this segment. But I understand that when there's kind of limited curb to curb space, there are trade-offs to be had. I'm not suggesting that this is an acceptable trade-off. It's something that we would need to look into further. But I'll stop and see if Mike has anything to add.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. There is a parallel street, Sherman Avenue to 11th Street, that has quite a few Sharrows. We put it in about 10 years ago, before a lot of the research on shared lane markings was established. So we did on that road try to get wide outside lanes. I think they're about 13 feet, which technically a bike and a vehicle can share that lane. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily comfortable. So we would not do something like that again. And maybe we'll be looking to retrofit that roadway someday. Typically now, if we put in shared lane markings, we might only do it for a block or two for a gap in the network if we have to. Again, we'd like to see a bike facility and some dedicated space, but at least having the markings on the road, and we can supplement it with signs, communicates both to drivers and bikes that are allowed there. Look out for them. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Chair Harris.
Thank you. Do you all have a percentage of how many parking spaces would be removed in comparison to the overall inventory for the area?
I don't have that. And I'm sure that is something that our curbside team could help us estimate. We can kind of define, what the radius of the area and kind of take a look at the available, parking by type, and make that estimation.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, because I think seeing the numbers that you have up of how many spaces are removed, I would imagine, that seems like a lot, but if we can look at the comparison, we can really understand, how much is that in comparison to, the blocks. I think also what's helpful too is in comparison to residential parking versus just regular parking, I guess. I'm struggling with the term. Thank you. That's all I had, sorry.
Make
Thank
note of
you,
that.
Chair.
We can work on that.
Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here, Christopher. I really appreciate the presentation. I had a couple of questions about how this would impact other things that go on in the area, and I understand like it might not already have been discussed or whatever, but I wanted to bring it up in advance. So as we know, Howard University Hospital is in the area, and a lot of times we have ambulances going by in and around the area. I was wondering how you thought that changing 11th Street or Vermont Ave would possibly affect that. And in addition to that, we also have the 64 bus, which runs on 11th Street and also Vermont Ave. And so I was just wondering if there've been any changes or anything surrounding that that would, help with the influx of traffic, if it was a one way or, how we would sort of get around that.
Yeah, a great and important question, and thank you for asking. DDOT, of course, like we're one team at DDOT, and we have other teams that coordinate very closely with WMATA and with our fire emergency services and medical services, FEMS. And we have a process kind of where we review our plans with those entities and make sure that there are no concerns in terms of access, any sort of safety kind of unintended safety consequences of any of our projects. And so, that is something that we're keenly aware of and take into consideration. In regards to the bus, I don't think on this narrow corridor, and I know that this wasn't necessarily your insinuation, but I don't think that there's any bus service between Vermont and Florida on 11th anymore. But certainly there are bus routes along, Vermont Avenue and, of course, all along on other streets. So, Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I think that's good. We work with emergency medical services, like Chris said, to review the plans. And otherwise, we have many streets like this throughout the district, including near other hospitals that are one way, and we have not, or I'm sorry, not just one way, one lane in each direction. We have not experienced any problems with emergency access.
And I'll also just comment, we do make sure if we do have a, like on Vermont Avenue, when we're proposing reducing it from 2 lanes to one lane, we do maintain width, a healthy width, so that there is room for vehicles to maneuver and kind of get out of the way of emergency vehicles. We make sure that we maintain a healthy width for all types of vehicles to pass.
Okay, and I just also wanted to ask a follow-up question. I know the African American Civil War area right outside the U Street station has also, raised some concerns with protected bike lane and how that would impact people coming to view the area. Have you guys spoken with anyone from their team and gotten any feedback, or how would you suggest that they go about their concerns with the changes?
Yeah, so I know that there's some development review happening and some proposed changes at the museum. We met internally with a number of DDOT kind of stakeholders and the council member's office, and reached out to the lead operations point of contact. And I don't, from what we can determine, there doesn't seem to be anything in our plan that would prevent any sort of future plans, whether it be tour bus access or pedestrian access from the metro or crossing across to the plaza. And so we have an open line of communication via email with the museum, and again, as we kind of continue our public outreach, certainly happy to go meet in person and talk through any sort of concerns that they might have.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. Commissioner Chauvin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Berg. for your attendance here and your promises of more near-term meetings, both here on 11th for 11th Street and also for Vermont Avenue. I appreciate your willingness to continue to meet closely with our neighbors who hold some concerns about what this will do to their culture and ability to maneuver as they get old. Several sets of residents would like to age in place and be safe doing that. So I appreciate it. My quick question is, I had sent an email to both the director, DDOT director, and yourself regarding the move DC and the pending review to review that plan for 5 years. So you'll be renewing all of the plan and looking to set a 5-year term for installation of that Move DC that has been set up over the last several years. Can you tell me, would Vermont Avenue or 11th Street be considered in that reevaluation of what lanes might be important to keep going and which lanes might be important to drop?
Yeah, so the move. I appreciate the question. Move DC is kind of a federally mandated transportation plan that we have to have, and again, our bikeways network is a part of that. And every 5 years, we kind of reevaluate and kind of update the map and improve the map. And so that is the process that will happen as we approach 2026. And then kind of separately, of course, our team, Mike and I are helping to lead the strategic bikeways plan. And what we're trying to accomplish there is to think about, be very strategic about how we build out our network, assess the existing network and fill in the gaps where there are gaps, expand to where we've, not done a good enough job expanding to make sure that we have a fair, equitable, and safe transportation or bikeways network. And so, when it comes to our active projects and projects that we've already identified or that we're already working on, this isn't a go back and reconsider and say, oh, that's not a good project. We're kind of constantly assessing our work plan as we initiate phases and get into the concept planning. And neither of these projects, again, our kind of run afoul of our goals or, are not congruent with the Move DC plan or our bikeways strategic plan in general. And so, I'm happy to have a deeper conversation with you about why we think that way, and kind of what the qualities are of each project that kind of make them solid, bikeways network expansion projects. But I'll wrap it up there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chauvin. Commissioner Sycamore.
Hi, thanks so much, gentlemen, for coming on. Just as a quick caveat, I am a cyclist and a driver and a pedestrian myself. So I applaud you for dealing with these multi-modes of transportation and dealing with all of this. Just a couple quick questions. Christopher, you said that tonight we don't necessarily would have to vote on this tonight, correct? Like there's nothing hanging on our vote tonight. Is that correct?
I don't necessarily feel qualified to answer that question. I mean, it's ANC business. Well,
I meant if we didn't vote on it tonight, it wouldn't hold up anything on your end.
No. Again, we're moving forward. In
Right.
each one project with traffic analysis and the other with design. I will say it is very helpful to know what alternative is most supported by the community and by the ANC. And so that does help clarify kind of the path that we take. And so it is important that we get feedback from the ANC.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason why I'm asking is that I feel like I've had a lot of residents who are kind of shocked by this, who didn't even know that there was more than one plan. So I feel like a little bit more community engagement might be necessary. So that's the only reason why I'm asking about that. I want to make sure that we're not holding you up. So on top of that, my question is, why are we investing into the 11th Street bike lane. I mean, we have 15th Street, 14th Street, 9th Street, which are already very poorly maintained, in my opinion, as a cyclist. I don't think they're very well maintained at all. I think they have some lousy designs on there. Why are we investing in 11th Street when we're not even investing into the bike lanes that we already have?
Yeah, you know, I know that maintenance is a very important aspect when we think about kind of the overall health and quality of our bikeways network, and it's something, of course, that we are striving to improve upon. We have a standing meeting with our kind of street and bridge team that does a lot of the bike lane maintenance, and we're working on improving our dashboards, improving our responses, you know, reducing the noise that team can't deal with so that they can focus on the stuff that matters. And, you know, my goal is to be able to confidently say, if you submit a 311 service request for a bike lane problem, if that's a curb stop that's broken or out of place, a flex post that is knocked over, you know, painting markings that are not up to standard, that it gets taken care of. Obviously, there are SLAs that are negotiated that we don't control, but we do kind of control the spotlight that gets shined on some of those issues. And so I'll just say it's very important that we continue to try to improve upon that, so that, you know, number one, safety, number two, optics and public feedback on the facilities. And the second question, or the why 11th Street, again, you know, it's a really great opportunity to connect Columbia Heights with downtown. It's a very long, you know, relatively straight corridor. You know, 15th Street kind of ends at Florida Avenue, unless if you have an e-bike or really powerful quads, and you can get up along Malcolm X from Meridian Hill Park. You know, 9th Street kind of, you know, dead ends at Florida Avenue. And so this kind of gets you up the hill. The alternatives aren't very favorable either. You have Georgia Avenue, doesn't have bike facility, it's very busy. You have Sherman Avenue, 13th Street is very, very steep. 16th Street is very, very steep, doesn't have bike facility. So again, we're trying to, when we think about accessibility and a safe bicycle network, 11th Street is a really great candidate. Again, if we had more width between the curb to curb in this section, it'd be a slam dunk no brainer. But obviously, you know, there are some challenges when there are with limitations. And so, you know, I think it has, again, we have a really strong opportunity to build a very contiguous protected bike lane facility on a very hot corridor route. We do have some data that kind of shows that it's a popular bike facility downtown. We have a southbound lane bicycle counter, and we see that we have, you know, over 1,200 cyclists in that part of town. We also see from kind of manual counts that happen at 11th in Florida, we see that 11th Street ranks about, I think, like 6th or 7th or 8th when it comes to popular bike corridors, and that's with an unprotected bike lane and a sharrow. So, you know, if we really did more to protect and make it in all ages, all abilities, I can only imagine, again, access to schools, access to commercial spaces downtown. You know, it's a really great, really popping corridor, which I'm sure is why so many folks choose to live near it. And so, yep, I'll stop there.
That's where I live too. So would you be willing to come out and do maybe like a walkthrough with some residents? Because the vast majority of the residents I've gotten in contact with just don't know and are just concerned, and they just think it's just everything's going to be taking away their parking and everything.
Right.
And so would you be willing to come out and do a walkthrough with neighbors, specifically in my SMD?
Yes, absolutely. Let's
Great.
reach out via email, and let's look at the calendar and figure it out. And obviously, if we can do some combination, I want to be respectful of like local block by block kind of needs, so we can do multiple. But yes, certainly as we kind of kind of get clarity on what our alternatives look like from a kind of traffic safety perspective, we'll kind of know what tools are in our toolbox. And
that'd be great. Yeah, especially when it relates to parking, because parking around here is already a nightmare, and that's also a big issue. All right, I had a couple more questions, but I think they're pretty much answered. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Sycamore. Commissioner Fields, if you don't mind, because you already asked a question, can I move to Commissioner Kensick, and then there are some folks in the audience, and then I can get back to you. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Kensick.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's a tough situation. I will say that I work very closely to that area. I see bikers on a regular basis, morning, evenings, get hurt. I've seen it even when they're not doing something wrong. They're actually driving, they're following the rules of the law, as drivers should be as well. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that we would want to keep bicyclists safe as well. I want to say that I've read through every email going back and forth, and I know this isn't the time to bring this up, but I'm just saying in general, I think all commissioners should actually look at the overall and say, we might lose a couple of parking spaces, which none of us like, we all pay for it, but at the same time, human life, I mean, we have to be fair. It's two parties, and people use bicycles to get to work. People use bicycles to go bike riding. There's a lot of reasons for it. And I think that 11th Street, watching, at least in the last 8 years living here, 3 or 4 people, bicyclists getting hit and actually not, abiding the law. It's sad. I've even posted on Twitter when I've seen it. So I just really wanted to make more of a statement and where I'm going to be going with my vote on this. But I do think that everyone should consider that, because everyone has a right to be on the road, whether it's a pedestrian, bicyclist, a driver. It should be something that we should all keep that in mind. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kensick. I'm going to go to Commissioner Fields, and then I'm going to go to the couple of folks in the audience.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to reiterate, and thank you for that, Commissioner Kensick. But again, please, commissioners, stick to questions so we can get through this. I want everybody to have time to ask their questions, and then we will move on to comments at our next portion for the resolution. So community members as well too. I know there's a lot of you here. I just want to make sure we get to questions to make sure we're learning as much as we can from the presentation, and then we can get to comments when we are looking at our resolution before us.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Christopher. I just was coming back because I know you said that you didn't see a bus stop on those streets, but there's a stop on 11th in Florida, and then there's also a stop on Vermont Avenue Street. And I was just wondering, again, decreasing down to, one lane, how that would impact not only bikers and pedestrians, but also people getting off the bus, if that could be considered by DDOT moving forward with future planning and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, the way I was talking maybe is not super precise. Yes, again, when it comes to these, especially at the design phase, we've, confirmed the bus stop locations, the preferred, routes, especially with the Better Bus network rework. Wilmot has requested a layover spot that we're, working to accommodate in these designs. We have, come a long way with bus platforms that are kind of bulbed out and provide more kind of waiting room and standing room, and kind of an ability for bus riders to get and board the bus in a safe way without having to step off the curb, potentially step into a travel lane. And so, we'll be working on making sure that those designs and best practices are kept for both of these projects, but in particular on Vermont Avenue, where there are a number of bus stops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. And I don't know, Chris, if you were talking when you meant earlier, you meant the bus doesn't run on 11th anymore between, S Street and Florida Avenue. It does like the loop, which is what I think Commissioner Fields was asking, but that was just a miscommunication. Elsa, could you allow Krishna Kumar and the attendees to talk? Yeah, they have their hand raised.
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead, Krishna.
Okay, great. First, Mike, Chris, thank you for coming in. Thank you for your work. It's actually very much appreciated, and I'm very glad to hear that DC is building some world-class bike lanes because we all are going to be using them. Two quick questions. On the stretch of 11th Street between Florida and Vermont, as someone who uses that every day, I live on 11th Street. The primary issue would seem to be the road surface and the fact that there's rails in the road. And I want to know if any of these plans involve ripping those out and actually improving the road grade. Second question for you is just looking at your plans for Vermont Avenue. I might have missed this. It looked like there's no room for street trees, and I just want to confirm with you if that is the case.
Thanks. For the first question about the kind of embedded or underground rails, I know that that's an issue, and I know that that causes havoc for the repaving kind of operations, and the deterioration is more rapid with those rails in. I've discussed this with members of our team, and I know that it's a well-known issue. I also know that in order to extricate them, it is very expensive and time consuming. I'm not quite sure if there are solutions or mitigations that can be done that don't require them to be removed. But again, as we think about design and pavement conditions and service conditions, that is something that we're aware of, and I know transportation folks are eager to find a solution, and I'll see if Mike has any more of a nuanced or better answer than that. Not to put you on the spot, Mike.
Yeah, no, that's right. We're running into this issue actually on Columbia Road Northwest, where we're putting in some protected bike lanes. And typically we wouldn't remove them. We'd try to repair as much as possible unless we were doing a full resurfacing. Because sometimes what can happen is the roadway underneath, the bed of it can actually collapse and cause more damage unless they are removed properly. So yeah, so it really takes a pretty big effort to remove those. So there'll probably just be some sort of patching until we actually did major rework of the road, which wouldn't be part of this project.
Thank you. Alrighty, Elsa, could you take Krishna out and put Paul Carlson next, who has their hand raised?
We said Ronald or Paul?
I said Paul, but I guess we already promoted Ronald, so Ronald, go right ahead, and then Paul after
Sorry,
that.
if we can just go in order of the
Okay.
hands raised, it should
Fine.
be in that. I think Paul was next, but if
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
go in that order, Elsa. Okay, sorry.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Paul. And then Paul will get to you, and then Ronald will get to you. Sorry about that confusion.
No worries. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us. I think this is a wonderful conversation. I think I just wanted to chime in and say that, I've been very involved in this conversation. It got brought up 2 years ago, but over the course of the last 2 years, I personally have been reaching out to DDOT to ask questions about all the things that are happening with the infrastructure changes. And I have not received any responses back from DDOT. I even sent an email to Mr. Berg in April that I got no response back, and I didn't get a response back till the summertime. And I think at this point, there's so many questions that the community has that they would like answered. For example, loading and unloading for businesses and residents. And I don't think that there should be an approval of this until everything has been vetted out. And I know that this has been a conversation that on paper has been discussed for a long time, but if there wasn't a DDOT person in the position for a course of 2 years, I can't say that that's a valid reason to say that this has been worked on. So anyway, I appreciated the community's work on this. I think it's important that we work as a community to live together and work together. And I think there's a lot to be vetted out here. And I think there's a lot of community members that are just asking for some time to be able to discuss this properly before this is voted on. Thank you.
Thank you,
Just
Paul.
just to reiterate, sorry, this is the time to ask some questions if you have them. I'm not saying that there won't be a future meeting with DDOT or the ANC, depending on what we decide here today.
I
But
sent a long list of questions to Mr. Berg and I haven't gotten a response yet. So, and I don't want to take everybody else's time. And so I'm trying to be respectful of the community. So
yes, and sorry, I was not finished, but please, if you can also CC your commissioner on it, and we can try to get you the answers to those questions as well. But I was
I've
just
CC'd the commissioner and Brianna Doe, and I have not got a response from any of those people. So
okay. Please let me finish. But yes, if there are other questions, we can answer them now. But if not, we will try to surface those. Again, please CC your commissioner, whoever it is, and we will get to those. You can also CC the entire commission, and we can make sure your questions are answered.
certainly, and my commissioner has requested the transportation committee to put a pause on this for 2 months so that they can be vetted out, and it was quickly shut down by yourself.
I was on the call and I said that we can certainly vote on it. The commission can raise motions. I'm going to end it at that. We need to move on to questions. If we have further comments, we can make those at our next portion. Ronald, you can go ahead and ask your question. Ronald, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. My wife and I are senior citizens and we live right at the intersection of Vermont and 11th. So we're going to be affected by protected bike lanes if it goes forward on both sides of our house. And my biggest concern is very limited community outreach. I have spoken with a lot of residents between S Street and U Street. None of them knew about this. The ANC or DDOT has not reached out to anybody to have a dialogue about this so that we can get to some sort of a compromise for a solution. Now, as a senior citizen, my biggest concern is safety. My wife and I are active pedestrians, and our biggest concern are bikers, scooters, and mopeds that do not follow the rules of the road. There are a few that do, but the great majority don't. When we cross the crosswalk here in front of our house, majority of those type modes of transportation do not stop. I have to raise my hand, I have to yell to ask them to stop. On top of that, I don't believe that there's any enforcement rules in place or any type of accountability mechanism. The bikers turn around and say, we have the right to roll through red lights and stop signs. And when they come down the hill, they go really, really fast. And many times I've been yelled obscenities for saying something to them. The other thing is, my wife and I, we want to age in place here. We love this neighborhood, the diversity and what it has to offer. My family has a couple of businesses and everything, and we want to stay here. So my proposal is a pause to enable DDOT and the ANC to have an active and upfront dialogue with the community. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I'm just gonna reiterate again, this is our question portion. Thank you for the comments. We are now going to turn on a timer because we need to be conscious of everyone's time here. So Commissioner Trindade DeRamo, if you can go ahead and turn on the timer. Community members, you have 2 minutes to ask your questions or comments.
Nick Deladon, you're next.
Thank you. Commissioner Fields raised the question of the passage of first responders, the EMS and so on. When you narrow the road to one lane, it is quite obvious that there's going to be an obstruction. If there's an obstruction, the EMS is not going to get through. So, and I have spoken to a fire chief, John Donnelly, at a public meeting, and he said that he wishes that there was a relationship between the fire department and DDOT, and he told me that privately as well. So I'm getting the opposite from you. All you do is give assurances that, oh, well, we check on that. In what way do you check on that? I'd like to know that. And the second thing is, it seems obvious that you cannot put these bike lanes on every street. What criteria do you use in finding a street that you really find inappropriate for a bike lane? Because we get into a situation where on 11th Street, which seems quite obviously a problem, and we're having a lot of conversation about trying to prove it or convince you that it's not a good idea. So if you could address those two issues, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you for your question. I have a little bit limited exposure to kind of how DDOT interfaces with, the fire marshal's office, kind of at large. I know that on projects, as we go through, project checklist, we have, we reach out to local firehouses, kind of look at their kind of emergency routes, their preferred routes, and make sure that, they've seen the designs. In my tenure at DDOT, which is relatively short, we've discussed specific projects with our safety team, with a kind of a myriad of DDOT employees, as well as a number of representatives from the fire marshal's office and FEMS, the various departments within FEMS. And so I know that that coordination happens, and obviously, like we do live in a constrained city, and there are roadways that aren't wide. And so, of course, there are going to be some issues, in terms of routing, in terms of, having to move traffic out of the way. That's kind of a reality of our, shared confined roadways that, again, were built in the time of horse and carriage. And then, Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add there. Again, obviously, I know that we have, many different divisions within DDOT that interface closely at a leadership level with all sorts of city partners across the city, from emergency preparedness to, evacuation routes to, operations and maintenance, and all of that kind of, touches on fire, emergency medical services.
Yeah, no, that's certainly right. We do live in a constrained environment. We coordinate with the fire department. They're aware of where the bike lanes are. Sometimes they adjust their routes accordingly. Also, it's important to point out on some of the bike lanes, especially the two-way bike lanes, those can also be used by emergency vehicles, especially if the travel lanes are blocked by cars. So sometimes they do provide even more options for fire and emergency medical services.
And then to your second question, obviously, like transportation planners like Mike and others have spent a lot of time looking at our bike maps, engaging with the community, using their transportation planning brains to design a bike network that is functional, that gets people access to destinations that people want to go. And of course, we're nowhere near having a bike lane on every street. What we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish with this 5-year strategic plan is to think very strategically about, how we can best build out that network in a way that considers all road users, but, certainly with the principal goal of providing, all ages and abilities bike network, because it's not just, one demographic that bikes. We know that, people of all ages, backgrounds, races bike across the city, and we need to make sure that we serve as many different types of folks as possible. And so, when we're trying to identify the most suitable projects, we consider a whole host of considerations.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for that question. Elsa, could you allow Jean Hamza to speak?
And
Jean's
also, commissioners, If you can go ahead and help answer some of the questions in the Q&A, we will try to read some of them aloud, but I know some community members have been waiting to get their questions answered. And Mike and Chris, if you can do the same thing, I know that's multitasking, but there's a lot in the Q&A. And community members, if you, again, don't want to raise your hand and ask your question aloud, you can put your question into the Q&A.
Jean, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, yeah, my question was in the Q&A, wasn't answered, and so I'm curious, will the U Street Performance Parking Zone lose parking spaces that the community is counting on for funding? So the 11th Street, Vermont Avenue, if you're working with your curb team, do you guys know how many spaces we're going to lose that were supposed to be a part of the surge parking?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm sorry. If I actually have the NOI up, if you would like, I don't know if you had it up as well.
No.
Gene, to answer your question, it would be 2 blocks that are within the zone according to DDOT's proposal. So it would be the 2000 block, so the 1 block from U to V, and then the block from T to U on 11th would be the 2 blocks that would be a part of the zone that would no longer I'm not sure if they would no longer have any of the paid parking as a part of it. I'm not sure what the
So there would still be residential parking probably, but we would lose surge parking and we don't know how many spaces.
Yeah, and I would say that is under the current version of the NOI. They haven't issued a final version in response to the comments that we gave that asked for more blocks.
Okay. So we anticipate finding out sometime in the future.
I very much do anticipate that is a different team on DDOT, but I very much
right.
They know we care a lot about it.
Well, Mike says that they coordinate with the curbside team, so I just wanted to make sure that this is on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you. We've gone through questions. We're at 8 o'clock. Chair Harris, do we want to move?
No, I need you to put the resolution up on the screen. We cannot make a motion until that is up on the screen. I'm gonna, in the meantime, I think, so there's a lot of comments in here. If if anyone wants me to read this, I can. We're trying to look through the questions. There's a lot. I don't want anyone to feel like they're not being heard. However, just for the sake, I will go through this. Commissioner Lakatos, if you can go ahead and get the resolution on the screen, then commissioners can both listen to the comments, but then also view the resolution at the same time. Commissioners, you did have this in your inbox, so it shouldn't be too new for you. And then Mike and Chris, if you can just stick around as I get through these questions and comments and hear the questions in particular, if you can go ahead and answer them into the chat. I think you both are probably better suited to answer some of these. I think the commissioners did go through to try to answer them. So I'm going to start from the top. Jeremiah Young, I live on 11th Street, but fortunately we don't drive, so aren't immediately impacted by the changes to on-street parking, and I'm generally in favor of it. However, it will represent a problem for any visiting relatives or for contractors, given a reduction in parking will increase competition for other spots. I can't think of a way to resolve this problem. Does DDOT envision that performance parking will open up enough parking spaces for non-residents to use?
Chairperson Harris, is that something you want us to respond live?
Yes.
And not in the chat? Okay. Yeah, I mean it's a big question in a dense part of town. Again, what the impact of removing some parking will be. You know, our goals as a department at DDOT is to, you know, or on the bikeways team is to increase mode shift for bikers and to make it more palatable to not have to own a car and park it on the street. And that means that, there may be less congestion for those that do need, understanding that not everyone can walk or bike or, use alternative transportation modes. The more people that do bike and rely on that as their main mode of transportation, potentially the fewer vehicles you'll be contending with when it comes to traffic, when it comes to parking on the block. And so, our hope is that as mode shift changes and more people bike, there'll be fewer cars on the street, freeing up for those that need it most.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yep.
I think something that's incredibly important and something I highlighted, and I think other commissioners have highlighted, is that we really need firm numbers around, very publicly out there if you need the commission to share it, but on how many spaces will be removed and what that looks like on the street level. And then I would also like to see personally, and I think others would also, I don't mean to speak for others, but to see how that is in comparison to the overall inventory of the parking around. So I'm sure people who drive and who own cars don't just specifically park all the time on 11th Street. There's probably other options, especially if there's competition already. So I would like numbers around what the percentage of how it's affecting the entire inventory of the area itself. So it seems like this is a regular issue that is coming up. People want to know how this is affecting that, where the other spaces will go, if there will be improvements on RPP, if there will be, how this impacts the performance parking, all of that. But we need more numbers around that. I'm going to try to get through. This is a larger comment. So I'm going to get to the question at the end. And this is, I think, something that Commissioner Fields alluded to. But what are you doing to make sure the residences in the business are cared for here? In terms of, I think, parking and making sure the construction noise and just overall disruptions of when this when this project comes to fruition.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I know that in cities across the world, this kind of debate is happening about kind of impact of bike lanes and increased bicyclists on businesses. I think that there's evidence that shows that it can work really well for businesses. When it comes to disruption of construction, typically our projects don't take that long to construct. A lot of times it's striping and drilling in concrete curb stops and flex posts, which can be done in a matter of Mike. I haven't done a ton of them myself, but a couple of weeks, I believe, Mike, if you correct me. So in terms of kind of the construction impact, I don't think I know everyone's used to road work and utility work, and it can be a long and painful process, and we're sympathetic to that. But the construction of these projects are normally pretty quick. And again, when it comes to figuring out how best to allow businesses to have commercial loading zones so that they can continue to get deliveries and send stuff out and have pick up drop off for would-be customers that are using rideshare that maybe aren't going to arrive by bike or arrive by metro or arrive by walking. We want to make sure that that's an option too. And of course, as DDOT more holistically looks at kind of short-term commercial parking in this area, there's a larger effort happening outside of these two projects to make the area more accessible to visitors, to patrons of businesses. And so, when it comes to our corridor projects, again, we said this before, we'll work with our curbside team to make sure that the parking that it will be retained. And again, we'll work to get you numbers on kind of what percentage of the overall parking landscape, what that represents, that we make sure to meet the needs of the community.
Okay, thank you. We did have a comment that I just answered live of, we've had two of one to pause, I guess this, and then another comment saying their support of option 2. I just wanted to say those out loud. I just put those as an answer, or that we answered live. The next is, as new types of bike lanes are added, what's the city and DDOT doing to train motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians to use these safely, clarify right-of-way, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question, and Mike, feel free to chime in. You've been at this longer than I have. I think, people are creatures of routine and habit, and I think we have our preferred routes, we have our the streets and roads that we're comfortable with. I think the more that people have a predictable, safe network to get to where they want to go, the more predictable their commute is, and then oftentimes the more predictable their behavior. I think, part of the challenge of having an incomplete network is when you're riding in a facility and then all of a sudden that facility ends, and navigating kind of how you choose to engage. Do I go in the street? Do I go up on the curb? Potentially, kind of sharing space with pedestrians who may not be expecting it. I think what we're trying to do is create a network environment where there's predictability, where there's comfort, where there's kind of routine, so that it's again, people can use it as a reliable, safe, and serious mode of transportation. And so when it comes to rider behavior, just like we have with drivers of cars and vehicles, like there are people that don't behave well on the streets. And I think when it comes to enforcement, I know that there's a lot of conversation generally about how we do better on enforcement. And that's not something that, Mike or I can solve with this, but I think when it comes to designing a better network and designing a more predictable environment for users of the bicycle facility, I think that will go a long way in helping.
Okay,
Yeah, and
thank you.
I just wanted to jump in with a couple things by the time here.
Let's also, I'm so sorry, I just want to make sure we have a lot here, so if we can get
Okay.
through some of these quicker, that would be excellent. And if we need to set up another meeting, we certainly can. But we have a lot of questions here, and we haven't even gotten to a motion or a resolution or anything. So
Okay, you want to move on to the next question then?
yes.
Okay.
So if we can get a quick answer on this, I think this was answered. Will the bus stop stay in the same location on Vermont? And how long will construction take for the Vermont portion of the project?
I can't, I'm not a bus route or stop expert in terms of like what's currently existing and how the proposed changes are. I know that our design plans are accommodating WMATA's needs in terms of bus stops and routes. I don't believe there are any changes. There might be an addition of a southbound bus stop on the northwest corner of Vermont and U. But again, we'll be posting our plans as they are released on our website.
Actually, I think this is a good point. Can you clarify where we are at this point in the project? And then how long does it take us to get to the next phase?
Yeah, so we are currently kind of drafting preliminary plans. We've gone through one round of design and then internal review. We should be getting the next round of design plans from our design consultant within the matter of the next couple weeks. From there, we do another round of internal review. We'll issue a notice of intent, an NOI, where we publish those plans, receive feedback. There's a 30-day business day, as you're well aware, feedback period. We incorporate and tally the feedback that we receive, come back to the ANC, kind of talk and be transparent about the feedback that we received, and then we take that feedback and move it into our kind of final design phase. And obviously, it depends upon kind of the complexity of the project and the comments that we receive, but that process takes a matter of a few months. And I'd imagine we'll be ready to move to construction sometime in the spring or early summer.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Next question, this is a longer one. They mentioned that there is a huge substantial loss with parking. It's not a couple spaces, it's between 65 and 129, kind of what was up there. I think it is helpful to see the overall inventory. I will back off from reiterating that. So first, I'm going to go to the second one. For the commissioners and transparency purposes, how many commissioners on this call have cars and are limited to using street parking, and how many of those live on the stretch of 11th Street are we discussing? I will go first if anyone wants to chime in very quickly. I do not own a car because I can't afford to own a car. Parking is very expensive. I don't believe, I don't want to take up city resources and do on-street parking. So I can't afford a car. I do not have a car. My primary mode of transportation to work is Capital Bike Share. And my boyfriend does have a car. And and I live right on U Street. He has RPP and he hasn't once had issue finding parking on U Street. I know that's different in other areas, but he hasn't had issue whenever he has come over to my apartment. So I know that's different for everyone, but I do consider that factor. I consider that factor when I have family visiting, so I understand the comments with that, but I personally do not have a car. I want to prioritize other modes of transportation, which is what I do every day, and I'll leave it at that. Commissioner Sycamore.
Yes, I am a car owner because of my job. It requires me to travel outside of the district, but when I am working inside the district, I use my bike all the time. That's my primary mode of transportation. And then second would probably be metro and then car. And I do have street parking. I am on W Street between Florida Avenue and 10th, so just a block off of 11th Street, but the 11th Street runs straight through my middle of my SMD. So to answer that question, thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. There's been some insinuations that people who do not live immediately adjacent to 11th Street, sorry, Commissioner Sycamore, I wasn't implying that to you, I promise. There's been
Commissioner Jones, can you keep this to the question that was asked?
Yes, may I use the 2-minute timer?
Yes, you can, but I just want to make sure that, and I will give you extra time, but I just want to make sure you're sticking to the question that was asked.
So yes, so there's been some insinuations, including this question kind of implies that people who do not live exactly on 11th Street or like right next to it on the stretch between 6th and Florida somehow have a lesser stake in public safety in that area, including bike and transit safety. I don't think that's true. The neighbors that I represent, many of us up the hill use 11th Street to get up and down the hill, and many neighbors further beyond who do not live in ANC 1B live up and down the hill. So while I don't own a car, my fiance does own a car, and she comes and visits me in parks. I bike primarily, I walk primarily, I take the bus frequently, but also we're here not just to, in our individual capacities, we're here to speak on behalf of everybody who lives and to weigh the costs, yes, and also the benefits of what's in front of us today. So I don't think we need to go any further one by one saying who goes through what, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Be fair to everyone. While I agree with some of that, I do want to be fair. And this person did ask. So we will be going one by one if commissioners want to answer. Commissioner Kinsick.
Thank you, Chair Harris. That's a great question. I do own a car. I am lucky enough to be able to walk to work, also bike to work. I use the buses as much as I can. subways included. But I do have a car, and I do understand the difficulties of finding parking on streets. And I know we do pay a lot of money to have that sticker with I think it's one on it, or to say that we're in the area. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Commissioner Henry.
We have one car in our household, and I use that car. I use bike share, and I use Metro.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment and reiterate what Commissioner Jones has said, even though some commissioners, our SMDs cross over into 11th Street and even the separate project of Vermont Avenue. We do take an oath to keep the interest of all district residents in mind, not just our SMD. So I want commissioners to remember that, and also community members. That is what we swear, or what we take the oath when we get sworn in. Okay, so the next part of the question, Chris, what does the NTSB or other agencies say about the effect of speed bumps or vehicular and bicycle safety, and how those effects compare to protected bike lanes? For safety purposes, why is that not being considered as an alternative? You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, I received this question in email before, and I believe there are limitations to what types of roadways we can put speed humps on, and again, separating like speed humps and reducing speed is good when they're used well. It doesn't necessarily mean that vehicles are not accelerating quickly in between speed humps. And if there's not a physical separated space for bike users or scooter riders to have distance and separation, the speed humps are only as good as people use them. And so it's not a substitute. It's definitely a tool that I think we should consider in our traffic safety inspection team, and our safety teams across DDOT utilize lots of traffic calming measures, including speed humps and speed tables, to try to slow vehicle speeds.
Thank you. The next one, when did DDOT contact the neighborhood about creating these bike lanes? Why is it a surprise to the community to see it after the fact? This would have been an opportunity for the ANCs to let their affected constituents an opportunity to weigh in at the beginning. It seems that DDOT dreams that these changes doesn't coordinate with stakeholders. So I will say that DDOT did contact the ANC in 2022. We did host a meeting around that. We did have community members attend. We had, I believe, 2 churches present as well for the 11th Street protected bike lane. So I understand that some community members were not able to attend that, and this is coming as a surprise, but we have discussed it then. And then I do know there are some transportation committee members on who know that we have discussed this at other committee meetings as well. I'm not saying that some improvements can't be made, but that has been discussed. It has been discussed at a number of meetings. Commissioner Lakatos, I don't know if you can speak more to that since you are the Transportation Committee Chair.
Could you repeat that last part of the question? Sorry, my headphones were ready up.
The question was, why is it a surprise to the community to see it after the fact? It basically was saying, when were the Transportation Committee meetings? When did DDOT come? I think there just needs to be better understanding of that. This came out of nowhere. This was discussed. And we can figure out tonight if it needs to be discussed more, but I need you to answer this. And commissioners, I know this is long, but please pay attention to the meeting.
Yeah, and so I can talk a little bit more about the process. And I'll give more context around the resolution as well. But so in July, I believe, we received a notification letter from DDOT saying that this project was starting over again, July of this year. Prior to that, as Paula Carlson noted, there had been a pause in the project. There was some turnover between the planners at DDOT because in 2022, they had presented an initial version of the plan, but there had been no updates in that time. I also attempted to get updates. I also got none. So I also wasn't hearing anything, and I tend to try to keep my ear to the ground. So we have July, we have the notification, July 2024. August, Chris came to the Transportation Committee meeting, presented. We took a lot of questions, a lot of comments. I believe the meeting was, I think, around like 2 hours, 45 minutes, 3 hours, very long for a committee meeting. Then we also had the Transportation Committee meeting last month, which is where we considered the resolution. I think that meeting was around 1 hour and 45 minutes. We similarly took comments and questions on the resolution. And then now we are here, but we're not precluding this resolution and sort of in the process, like I think you had Chris say before, we're not, shovels in the ground. We're not even at the design phase for 11th Street. And there's a lot more opportunity for engagement. And that's also, as a preview, that's a component of the resolution as well. And I'll get to that later on.
So what you're saying, Commissioner Lakatos, is that this is to simply support the protected bike lane, that it doesn't mean that are we supporting a certain option in this resolution?
Yeah. So I do we want to kind of you want me to move and give an intro over it, or do you want me to like abbreviate it here?
I think we're gonna move on. I think the comments, they're mostly comments in here that are reiterating others. I think the questions are similar. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the resolution.
I had a quick comment on that.
Okay, 1 second, Commissioner Sycamore.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lakatos, if you can go ahead and put the resolution on the screen, and then Commissioner Sycamore, go ahead as Commissioner Lakatos is putting that on the screen.
It's on the screen, Commissioner Sycamore.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I think, Chair Harris, you kind of hit the nail on the head. This was discussed in 2022 when most of this commission wasn't even elected, and we have not been able to engage with our constituents at this level. So it is coming to a surprise to a lot of people. So I'm really hoping that we can put forward a resolution, or I will probably put forward a resolution to delay this by at least another month or two to try to engage our community a bit more and give our people who are saying that they don't feel like they've been engaged that opportunity. So at the appropriate time, I would love to make that proposal.
It would be a motion, not a resolution.
Sorry, thank you.
Not the time. I will just say to commissioners, I think it's important for us to balance both the need for the residents who want more community engagement, the residents who are opposed to the protected bike lane, along with the residents who are also in support. We've all received a number of emails for both. So I don't think one resident's voice outweighs another. That's not how this works. So I would strongly encourage all commissioners to keep those in mind.
All right. So I'm going to move to the resolution. So as I laid out kind of a bit of that context of the timing. So in addition to that, that process in between now and the meeting, I'll add this resolution passed unanimously 4-0 out of the Transportation Committee. I've been in communication with Commissioner Chauvin especially because 3 of the 5 blocks are in his SMD. Commissioner Chauvin has offered a number of specific amendments that, as I circulated to the other commissioners, don't substantively change the resolution, but I would say reflect some of the additional concerns and also some of the concerns we heard tonight. There was actually some changes that were made the night of the committee meeting to address some of those concerns. Give me 1 second. Hold on, my word is freezing. So I'm going to walk through the resolution here, and the sections that I mentioned about that Commissioner Chauvin and I had worked together in terms of language, those are highlighted in yellow, just for people's reference. So the resolution acknowledges the Move VC plan, which was referenced earlier, acknowledges 11th Street being a component of that plan. It acknowledges that data that DDOT has received from aggregated data providers, location-based service data providers showing that biking and micromobility usage made up around 22% of all trips in DC, noting the amount of capital bike share usage, as well as noting when DDOT initially presented those preliminary plans in October 2022, noting that in December 2022, in the last elected ANC, adopted a resolution in support of the 11th Street Northwest protected bike lane segments north of Florida Avenue, as well as the Vermont Avenue protected bike lane project, while requesting that DDOT attend another public meeting on the segment between S Street and Florida Avenue, so the segment in question tonight. Noting the circumstances I mentioned before, noting the three different alternatives, noting difference between in terms of parking between the three alternatives, especially that alternative 2 and 3 would maintain one side of parking, noting how alternative 1 and 2 would have protection on both sides, noting the how protected bike lanes repeatedly been shown to increase the overall road safety for users, noting the reported amount of crashes for both driver, cyclist, and pedestrian injury traffic crashes on that segment, noting our, I think, concern generally to try and find a compromise that maximizes safety while supporting the availability of street parking, noting a survey that was conducted of residential buildings and row homes on 11th Street between Florida Avenue and S Street. This one is something that I also received a lot of feedback, noting the difference in elevation grades between like the hills, so like the Columbia Heights Hill. So how 14th Street and 15th Street have a much higher grade versus 11th Street. Noting the existing painted lanes and the significant amount of traffic that is already there. Moving to the be it resolved. The ANC 1B supports alternative 2 and requests that DDOT retain the lane of parking on the eastern side. So that is the lane, that is the alternative with 2 way protected bike lanes, as well as a one-sided parking. Additional, be it further resolved that DDOT install 88 parking spots in this segment using similar designs as employed in the 400 block of K Street with 88 accessible ramps. I'm going to scroll really quick to the bottom to show the appendix, and then I'll go back up. This is kind of an appendix here. I'll zoom in like a diagram. These are kind of the way the spots are designed is to allow for folks who have, who are handicapped or have other mobility challenges to sort of like safely be able to have like a dedicated space park, but also safely get from, their vehicle to the sidewalk. All right, going back up. Requesting that DDOT install signage ahead of said parking spot to warn cyclists of the upcoming spot. Asking that DDOT remove some of the daylighting on the southern side of the 1000 block of V Street. So this is right where it intersects with 11th. Replace it with a loading zone for Metro Access and other ADA accessible vehicles. This is a piece of feedback that we got in 2022 that I remembered and I wanted to kind of like hold on to for this moment. Requesting that DDOT ensure maximum safety pickup and drop-off zones for Meyer Elementary. Some folks also mentioned the streetcar tracks that causing issues, and so requesting that as part of any project that DDOT remove the streetcar tracks. Also requesting that DDOT install speed bumps and raise crosswalks along segments of 11th between S and Florida. This came in response to, I think, some of the comments that Ronald made tonight, as well as the previous meeting. An additional request for concrete barriers between the protected bike lanes, so not just like the posts, the flexi posts, the plastic ones, but also barriers. Here are the segments in yellow that I worked with Commissioner Chauvin on. So they're asking the DDOT evaluate installing dedicated commercial loading and loading zones on both the 1900 and 2000 blocks of 11th Street to accommodate deliveries for businesses there. Asking that DDOT evaluate the possibility of routing the protected bike lane around the streetery in the 1900 block of 11th. There's a similar design in the, I should say 9th Street. And the 1200 block of 9th Street by where Unconventional Diner is, for any of those of you who are familiar. asking the DPW increase parking enforcement within the performance parking zone using funds generated from the zone, including but not limited to additional OT, and the installation by DDOT of fixed parking enforcement cameras. Asking the DDOT evaluate the DPW evaluate the effectiveness of their overall parking enforcement within the U Street Performance Parking Zone area. Asking that DDOT separately study the design of existing facilities and reported hazards to identify to ensure that like future installations don't have any repeated issues. And asking that DDOT have at least 2 additional meetings to include an on-site walk, minimum, not have as many as possible, as well as a virtual meeting on the implementation and detailed designs for 11th Street when we get to the 30% design stage, within 45 days of release of said designs. And then additional be it further resolved that we ask for DDOT to widen the northbound lane between Florida and Clifton to allow for a passing lane and incline, as well as asking the DDOT use Zikla bus islands so those are like the bus, they're kind of like floating bus islands. They have them in front of Unido Cafe and the 900 block Florida Avenue and in front of the Rhapsody Apartments there. So it allows the bus just to stop and keep going. The cyclists keep going. So it doesn't kind of force the bus to pull over. It also helps so that the, what's it called? It also helps prevent people from parking the bus stop too. So there's a lot of stuff in the resolution. I'm going to stop sharing my screen briefly and I'll bring it back for folks' questions. I want to emphasize also there's a lot of questions and comments about Vermont Avenue, and I want to again reiterate that at likely our November meeting, because that would be when, according to what Chris emailed me the other day, they would be sure that they would have the newest version of the design plans. We will have another meeting about Vermont Avenue specifically to walk through those areas of the design. And then also, again, when we get to that stage with 11th Street, like the resolution would say, that is where we would get.
So, and just as a point of clarification, the resolution is specifically for the 11th Street protected bike lane. This has nothing to do with the Vermont Avenue protected bike lane, correct?
Correct. It is just about the 11th Street. It's specifically the segment between Florida Avenue Northwest and S Street. That's the only segment that this resolution deals with.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here we go. Commissioners, if you have questions for Commissioner Lakatos, comments, please raise your hand. Commissioner Trindade Duramo, I believe, who was the list? Commissioner Chauvin, myself, Commissioner Sycamore, and Commissioner Lakatos for the 3 minutes.
Yeah, those are the ones who have, the 4 of us are the people who have a part of the bike lane in their SMD in the specific resolution.
Okay. So let's give myself and Commissioner Trindade Duramo a little grace as we get that going, because that might be a little confusing for us. So we will get to that unless there is a motion for this, which anyone can raise a motion. But we'll get to comments and questions right now. And we will work through commissioners first, so please raise your hand. And then we will get to the community members that have questions or comments. Mike and Chris, thank you for joining us this evening. You're welcome to stay on. I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to put your information into the chat. Elsa, if you can then send that out to folks. But you've been with us for 2 hours now, so don't feel the need to stay on. If you want to, please do so. But commissioners, if you have questions for them, please email them. We're going to go ahead and try to move forward. Okay, Commissioner Chauvin. Hold on, Commissioner. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Chauvin. Thank you, Commissioner Trindade Duramo.
Yes, thank you. Let's see, protecting bicyclists is imperative by undertaking bike lane infrastructure. At the same time, and in the same breath, protecting the safety and commerce of new and multi-decade residents and businesses is also paramount. Over 3 years, there was 3 DDOT staff turnovers, breaking down the trust of the community feedback loop and substantially dropping the ball and losing the trust of residents. The resolution before the commission this evening asks for 2 more meetings to work through some of these issues with DDOT. I look forward to hearing from Mr. Berg of a schedule for the first meeting, perhaps a selected date chosen as early as next week or two. As late as this past weekend, I was calling for a 2-month pause on the passage of this resolution, but I thank Commissioner Lakatos for closely working with me and addressing a set of major resident concerns that were outlined in the resolution before you. I am here pasting the same set of additional provisions which Commissioner Lakatos and I have worked on to protect community residents and businesses in this very dense mid-city neighborhood. Lastly, I will ask that Commissioner Lakatos has also agreed that following the 1 or 2 pending meetings with DDOT, additional measures can and will be undertaken by resolution of the ANC Transportation Committee, so that additional business and resident concerns can be followed up and enunciated in another resolution. And I appreciate Commissioner Lakatos with his close partnership in all of this. And thank you for his very extended time he's spent with me personally on behalf of my my residents. And I am about to post into the chat again those provisions to cut and paste for everybody that have addressed and allayed many concerns that my residents hold. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just add, I thank you, Commissioner Chauvin, for reminding me, because I forgot, with all the comments we got, I forgot to mention that, yes, in addition to what this resolution tonight, as we enter the design stage, as we have those first 2 meetings and then the more meetings, I think there's a lot of room to give specific block by block input on the designs, and I'm more than happy. I want to kind of facilitate that, and that's something I plan to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Lakatos. Thank you, Commissioner Chauvin. Okay. Are there any other commissioner comments, questions? Awfully quiet. Commissioner Sycamore.
Hi, thank you. As I've already stated earlier, I think just for the trust of the community, this issue does need to be postponed by at least a month, if not 2. This issue has been taken up in 2022. It has not been taken up during the term of any of us currently sitting here. I think I'm not totally opposed to this, but many of my residents are. And I think it's because of the lack of information that they have. And all of this new resolution and everything that's gone in here is still very new information, even for us. So giving us time to be educated on this so we can effectively talk to our constituents and get that backing to alleviate these concerns, I think is a very important thing to do. I don't want to rush this if it's not going to impact DDOT's plans, for their timeline. I think it would be behoove us to possibly do that. And at the appropriate time, I would like to propose a motion if and when that happens. Can I propose a motion?
You're welcome to propose a motion at any point. I would like to get through the other commissioners, but if you have a motion, you can propose a motion.
And I will wait if that's all right then. Wait for everyone else. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, just to make it easier on the timer, since I am the other affected, not affected, we're all affected by this. My SMD is in this. I'm going to go ahead and speak, and then we'll get to the other ones if that's okay, just to make it easier. Okay, Commissioner Trindade Drama, if you want to set the timer. I was actually hit by a bicycle about a month ago. This was not on 11th Street. This was in front of the Trader Joe's. And luckily, you know, I wasn't hurt. The cyclist also wasn't hurt. Even though I was hit, I am terrified every single day of getting hit by a car, whether I'm walking or I am riding a bike, or if I am in a car. I am terrified because cars weigh multiple tons, as where a bicycle does not weigh that much. I am strongly in favor of the protected bike lane, because I know how much it improves safety. It improves road safety for everyone on the roads, especially cyclists. I think there is still plenty of time for community engagement, especially on the options in front of us. If there are other options, I have heard that option 2 is preferable. I would still like to see numbers from DDOT around the overall inventory of parking that is affected. However, I don't see us not voting on a resolution tonight, how that then tampers down community engagement of this overall protected bike lane. From what I am reading, it seems like people are opposed to the protected bike lane because of the removal of parking, not because of the protected bike lane itself. But I think we can still look at the options available to us while still voting to support the protected bike lane, because I think several community members have mentioned this, every day this gets pushed back, there's such a high chance of someone getting hit by a car, particularly a cyclist. And I am so tired of seeing the signs and the white bikes that are painted over people dying. And so that is why I am strongly voting in favor of the protected bike lane tonight. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Handerhan, also Commissioner Chauvin, are you finished? Can you take your hand down for now?
Thank you so much, Chair Harris, and everyone for the conversation tonight. You know, this was taken up, you know, in this commission with the meeting last month, but I just want to make sure that was clarified from an earlier comment. But I do agree with Commissioner Sycamore and others that I think there are people who feel like they don't have the information that they feel like they need. I think that DDOT and Christopher have and our colleagues have been really forthcoming tonight, and I think that's a good sign. I also do want to note I received about 25 emails about this issue, as I think a lot of other commissioners did. That's really rare to get that many emails about anything. Doesn't mean every single person was an immediate neighbor, but it's all people who used and were very fluent in the issue. So clearly there's been a debate that a lot of people have been able to plug into. Of those, I was tracking 2 requesting delay, 1 against any of the alternatives, and the rest in favor. So I think there's a lot of interest and appetite in a dedicated bike lane. I also believe that DDOT's going to do this anyways because it fits with the broader strategies for the city. I think what our role is to make sure it works with the immediate environment. For me, that's alternative 2, which has a dedicated bike lane and retains a lane of parking. But I have a lot of questions around the loading and unloading. I am fine with waiting a month to bring this up if that's what people, if that's the consensus of the commission. I'm not sure how much we risk losing our voice if we wait. And I think that is a legitimate concern. I also think we can say our interest and give great weight to something like alternative 2, which I would propose, and still ask for certain things in the coming weeks, including community meetings. So I just wanted to share that's where my head is right now.
The new one.
That's a new one. Commissioner Kinsick.
That was nice. So Vermont's off the table. I have to concur with Vice Chair Handerhand that we will be losing some great weight if this not talked about or discussed or motioned on this evening. I do think alternative two is the way to go. I think that everything I look at and as a commissioner going into my end of the second term, I try to weigh everything as a 50-50, something that works with both parties. You can't just say no to one and yes to the other. Again, as I mentioned earlier, people do depend on bicycles to get to work, to ride for fun, a lot of reasons. I don't know if I'd go into the point of saying, we should be living in fear for that, as Chair Harris said, but I do think that, the fact is that DC is going in the way of trying to make sure all lives, everybody's lives is important. And that's something that we have to recognize. I don't know what another month or two will bring. I have received over actually 33 emails, and they both have gone both ways. So I've gone through them and I've sat there and looking at every option. And I think having parking is obviously really important. I get it. I like the fact that we're still going to keep a side of parking, and we're going to keep a protected bike lane. So that's where I stand. And that's all. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I am not scared of cyclists. I am scared of drivers of vehicles. Commissioner Jones.
Fair enough. I would like to say that, a good point you bring up, Chair, is that there was something I watched the other night that a lady or an elder person got killed because not in DC, but someone riding a bike on a sidewalk. So, that's also something just to, keep note of. I mean, when bicyclists don't have an area to ride, they could potentially also hurt others. And that's
Absolutely. And we also see cars kill individuals every day, especially cyclists.
I agree.
Commissioner Jones.
Thanks. The resolution as presented, including the additions that Commissioners Lakatos and Chauvin worked on recently, addresses a lot of the concerns that we've heard tonight. Several neighbors asked for more opportunity for input on specifics. This resolution asks for meetings with DDOT to do that. One neighbor, actually several neighbors, were concerned about loading and unloading zones. The resolution has a clause about that, asking for more information about that. One neighbor was concerned about the streetcar tracks embedded in that stretch of 11th Street Northwest that have caused deterioration of the road conditions. That this resolution includes a line on that as well. One neighbor asked about the interaction of the bike lanes on the parking zone. This resolution touches on that as well. An observation that Commissioner Kensick made at the beginning of this is that this area is heavily used and that it is still risky. Commissioner Kensick has witnessed, and I've seen the aftermath of various wrecks. I've fortunately not seen any involving bikers, but I've seen dangerous drivers running their cars into other people's cars. That's no way to have a city. And then again, I want to reiterate that I think Commissioner Kensick is right that option 2 is the most appropriate way to retain as much parking as possible while establishing bike lanes and preserving lives. I personally, my opinion will not change between now and next month on what of the options ahead of us are most appropriate. So I don't see us gaining anything by delaying by a month or 2 months, but I might be in the minority on that. But I don't see any reason for us to wait.
Okay. Commissioner Lakatos.
Thank you. So I wanted to address, I think Commissioner Jones said a lot of what, and I probably won't use 3 minutes, but just for that would be for this instance. I've worked really hard on this resolution with committee members, with Commissioner Chauvin, with members of the community. I've heard a lot of feedback. I've also gotten a lot of emails. I got more emails about this than anything else in our entire term, including 1617 U Street. And I really tried to incorporate a lot of that feedback into this resolution, including asking for more engagement. Because when I hear, if you're folks, people might talk, sometimes people talk in generalities, about the bike lane or this other bike lane, this other bike lane. But then they say, okay, well, what I'm concerned about is, X situation right here in the design that is in front of my house. I want to make sure that that's addressed, or here's my business. I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about my safety when I'm biking here. I'm concerned about my safety when I'm crossing the street because of cars, because of bikes, whatever it is. I really tried to factor that all in. This resolution, and hypothetically, this resolution could have been half a page. It's 3 pages for a reason. Well, it's technically 4 with the appendix, because really tried to put all of that in here. And I really, the reason we're bringing it now, I don't really think a delay is worth this. I agree, like we lose a little bit of our voice. And I think with this, we have the agency and the power to be like, okay, here is the one of the 3 concepts that we like. Here is what we would want within that. Also, here is, we want to keep hearing from you and having this dialogue so that we can learn more. So we, the ANC, but also we, the community, can have that dialogue, and we keep facilitating it in person and also virtually. And so that's kind of that's my take. And I brought bringing the resolution forward. I'm very much in support of it. I would ask for everyone's support. I think you can see the product of the amount of work that went into it, not just myself, but other commissioners, and also community members, including the committee, which I would again add. We had several very long meetings, and this is the conclusion the committee came to. But yeah, I appreciate that, and it's late, so I'll get back on that. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sycamore, I'm going to go to the community members first, and then we will get back to you.
No problem. Thanks.
Go ahead and take Elsa, if you can go ahead and take Ben Clemens off of mute. He's had his hand up for a while, so thank you for your patience, Ben. Ben, you can, I believe, take yourself off of mute. Wait.
That might be the wrong. That's the wrong Ben.
That's the wrong Ben. Sorry, Ben.
Clemens, K-L-E-M-E-N-S.
Ben Clemens. There we go. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Yeah, so I have 2 minutes.
You do.
Am I audible? Okay, great. So yeah, with 2 minutes, I'm going to speak in from two perspectives. So first, I'm a member of the Transportation Committee, and I wanted to just comment a little bit on the meeting that we had last month. So there were 13 who spoke directly in favor of these bike lanes. There was a lot of support. Only 3 who spoke in opposition, and 2 ANC members who kind of focused on procedure. Of the 3 who spoke in opposition, 2 were of the opinion that bicyclists are more dangerous than cars. And as somebody who's lost family to a driver, I want to respond to that. Commissioner Harris alluded to this, that, and to give some data, there were 95 deaths on the road in DC, 2023 to 24, about a dozen of which were bicyclists who were killed. To the best of my ability to read the data, not one person in DC has been killed by bicyclists, including by e-bikes, during that period. The third person who spoke in opposition talked about how important it is for those with limited mobility to be able to go directly from automobile or mobility van to the sidewalk. And I think the rest of the committee did an excellent job of taking that concern seriously. And a number of alternatives were discussed on how to facilitate auto to wheelchair transitions. And you saw the appendix. I think, yeah, I just want to say that I think that those concerns can be addressed. It's not what we have and are used to now, but it can work. So not as a Transportation Committee member, but as somebody who lives on this street at 11th and V, I want to say that I'm very strongly in support of any kind of change, and definitely alternative too, as were most of the people at the Transportation Committee commenting. This was first brought up literally a decade ago, so I'm really happy to see progress made. There are times in the morning where there are more cyclists on this road than autos, as somebody standing on the sidewalk watching people, and it's a substandard street. So where there's the street area that we discussed, yeah, there isn't enough space for. Huh? How many seconds do I have left?
5 seconds. You're over time, but please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So anyway, it's a mess. There's something to be said for a chaotic street where everyone has to stay focused. But I really appreciate bringing this to something standard, to something where drivers have a lane that they can go down. They don't have to cross the yellow line over and over again.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, great work, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ben. Okay, Elsa, if we can just take the people who have their hands up. Matthew Holden is next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I live in 1B07, and I'm in a strong favor of voting on the resolution tonight and on option 2. I think the ANC should weigh in early and should weigh in often. The ANC will have multiple opportunities as the design goes through the rest of the phases to weigh in additionally through more meetings, virtual, in person, and on the street with DDOT and with community members. And 11th Street in particular is a major bike route, as everyone has previously said. From the U Street area, I believe 11th Street is the best way to get to Columbia Heights currently, and a bike facility will make it even better. So I think everyone should vote on this tonight. And thanks for your work, everybody.
Thank you. Elsa, go ahead and take Krishna off of mute, please.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I guess 2 comments, 1 question. Comment 1, just a reality check. You know, I'm the president of my condo board. I've just emailed the condo. Literally no one in the condo has ever heard of this proposal. And the feedback I'm getting on an instantaneous basis is very negative. 2, I actually do think Santiago and company have done a great job with this resolution. So I just want to say thank you for putting the work in. Third thing is I'm just a little confused. From what I heard from DDOT is that option 2 is something that they're not really considering. So maybe if Santiago can kind of address that a little bit, because what I heard from the presentation is that DDOT kind of prefers option 1, but if you can give a little bit more color on that, that could be helpful.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Krishna. So my understanding from this presentation and from the other presentations I've received is that because this would be changing 11th Street from a 2-way to a 1-way in option 2, to be clear, that it would require additional traffic analysis versus if it were to stay a 2-way. So this is sort of like we have like DDOT, they have the bike team. You also have the traffic engineering team who look at the city as a whole, and they try to calculate, you know, how many cars are going to be able to go on this road at this amount of time, and, you know, how will it be able to sufficiently hold and appropriately manage it without causing too much like traffic. I could spend, you know, maybe 2 hours talking about how, you know, I think ineffective traffic engineering, I think, is a discipline, but the reality, that's the reason. And I think part of the point of the resolution is I don't think that the first option makes sense because I think that it takes away all the parking. And I think that we should push DDOT to say, no, I don't agree with that. We should do this other one where we keep, you know, one side of parking. I'll add as a piece of context, we've had projects like this before where we have, you know, the initial planners come and they say for bike and bus projects, well, you know, we need to keep this amount of flow. We need to remove these lanes. We need to like add this, keep it away. So there's the sort of like the average daily travel amount works out. And the ANC has come and we weighed in. This happened with the Florida Avenue and the U Street Bus Party project. We came in and we weighed in. And what happened was they changed their tune because we lended our great weight in support of the idea that like we thought was best and that would still accommodate our residents' need. We said, we want the lanes offset. We don't want them on the curb. This is the bus party project. Sort of like this. I can go on and on for talk about this probably for like 2 more hours. Send me an email. We'll have coffee. But it's that's the kind of the point. And I would rather us push for something that we like some of it and we have some of it. We have all these specific details in there as well, than just going with the default that doesn't, I think, necessarily benefit them for what's the purpose, so that someone can get like an extra 35 seconds off of their commute from downtown to like Tacoma or something. I don't think it makes much sense, but I'll get off my soapbox because it's late.
Thank you. Elsa, can you go ahead and take Ronald Carlson off of mute, please? Commissioner Shandati Duramo, do you have the timer ready?
I'd like to make a very brief comment, and that is when the ANC Transportation Committee met about a month or so ago, there were only 2 or 3 of us that got involved because nobody else in our neighborhood knew about this. And so that's why we started mobilizing. The second thing is, since DDOT finished the construction here on 11th and Vermont, where there are protected bike lanes, I've been observing that. And it's interesting that less than a third of the bikers actually use the bike lane. They're using the shared road. It's better coming north, but going south, a biker comes, they see the protected bike lane, and they just go straight down the street. They go through the red light and everything else. So I don't have any opposition to bikers. What I would like to see is some rules of the road for bikers, because they don't obey anything. And I've even asked a police officer when a biker almost hit me that was sitting at the corner of T and 11th, and he says, I can't do anything. And so, you know, if there's some rules that the bikers and the scooters and the mopeds have to follow, then I don't have a problem with it. But if the bikers are not going to use the protected bike lanes, why should we have protected bike lanes? And I sit on the corner here, and I'm outside often because I'm retired, and I look at the people out there, the bikers, and they don't use it. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Lakatos, do you want to clarify any of that on the meeting, the Transportation Committee meeting, or no?
Yeah, I understand. I think some of the frustration. I would say I'm not sure which one he is talking about. But I mean, I made Ronald aware. I made Gloria aware. I made Paul Carlson. I made a lot of people aware. Commissioner Chauvin, I think, can speak to his work informing members of the community about this meeting. It was also published through the ANC newsletter, on our website. I tried to reach out to people who had sent emails about it already. And that I did my best to try. We had a lot of attendance. The meeting went very long because of that. That's really what I can add for that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other community members or commissioner comments? Okay, Commissioner Sycamore.
Thank you. First, thank you to everyone who's worked on this and everyone who's provided their feedback thus far. You've really done a great job, so my hat's off to you, in particular, Commissioner Lakatos and Commissioner Chauvin. To be clear, I'm not opposed to this project, but I don't see how our great wait will be diluted by giving a month delay. While I know many commissioners will not change their minds between now and then, it's very clear that this issue is very important to our community. And I believe that engaging our constituents and ensuring their voices are heard is the most important part of our job as commissioners. And if they don't feel heard, then we have failed as a commission, and we have failed as individual commissioners. That being said, I'd like to propose a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose a motion to postpone the vote of the 11th Street projected bike lane project by a month to our November meeting, in order to give commissioners time to properly engage constituents with and without DDOT, to educate the public and receive adequate feedback from residents of their single member districts and beyond.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Oh, no.
Commissioner.
Discussion. Sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
No, I was just going to add that I understand that concern, Commissioner, where I know that the motion comes from a good place. I would really just, I think, emphasize part of the resolution is really building in that request for getting that, additional engagement, specifically like on these areas of design, on speed bumps, on ADA accessibility, on loading zones, on all these aspects. And that I will be voting no on this motion. And that's, I'll leave it there and I'll pass it back.
Did I see, Commissioner Chauvin?
Yes, I was up until this evening ready to motion for a pause for 2 months. As I said a few minutes ago, Commissioner Lakatos addressed my whole set of concerns, and they're all in the resolution to address. Some of my constituents are going to be very mad if I do not support a pause. My community is the most affected because we have, this dense urban design, and my community is being ripped up by 2 lanes. Vermont Avenue, 11th Street. It's a lot on us. And so I expect, I believe I have the engagement of DDOT to have a meeting, maybe at least scheduled within the next week. That would give me some reprieve with my constituents who demand to be heard. There might be some additional issues we haven't addressed in these 6 amendments that I've placed in the chat. But I believe they mostly are covered. However, there are a few more things that we'd like to work closely with DDOT for. And I think I will support approving the resolution unless I can see hands up saying you want to pause. If I see you want to pause, I will. If there's momentum, I will have a pause. I will support a pause if there's momentum here. If I can get 4 votes, if there's 4 votes on that. However,
We're not taking votes right now on.
but it is my time, so I can sort of talk about these things. So I appreciate it. But I will, unless I see 4 hands going up here for a pause, I will vote to approve. So I think, and I will work harder than anybody besides Commissioner Lakatos to make sure that DDOT delivers here and that meetings are held. Otherwise, I have been known to show up at press conferences when directors are there. I will go find the director and engage with her to ensure that my constituents in my dense neighborhood are given the opportunity to be heard, which they have not to this point. But thank you.
Okay. Again, Commissioners, we're not taking a vote in the middle of a motion for something else. You should feel confident in what you are going to vote for, and stick with that. If you don't have enough information, you can certainly abstain. But you can be firm with your voice if you feel like something needs to be paused or whatever motion is on the table. I think if you want to start my timer, you can start at 30 seconds later. I won't take that long. I think someone in the chat said this best, and something that I was hinting at but didn't say it as well. This was from a community member named Nicole, and I apologize, Nicole, I do not think I can pronounce your last name correctly. But they said choosing to postpone the vote is delaying the implementation of a good plan that will improve the street. There have been other community members who have voiced that choosing to delay this is only putting lives at risk. Drivers of cars kill cyclists and people every day. If this is a chance to move a project along, I do not see any good reason to postpone this, especially since there are multiple amendments in this resolution to engage with the community further. And so I will not be voting in favor of this postponement.
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
Okay.
I move to call the question.
Second.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? This is for the
Sorry,
postponed.
point of order, Madam Chair, what's
This
the,
is to
what's
close,
the,
the call to question is to close the debate, to close the discussion. So we are closing the discussion, and then it is moving forward to vote on the motion that Commissioner Sycamore has put in front of us and Commissioner Kinsick has seconded. Okay. Does everyone understand? Okay. All those in favor of Commissioner's postponement?
sorry, Madam
This is-
Chair, are we voting to
You
close
called
the
it an-
discussion on the postponement, or are we voting on the postponement?
You called a question and I can, okay. All those in favor to move to close the debate? Opposed? Abstentions? The yeas have it. Okay. We move to close the discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Jones. All those in favor of the postponement? Opposed? Abstentions? The nays have it. Commissioner Lakatos,
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
go ahead.
I move that the full ANC adopt the 11th Street Protected Bike Lane project resolution as presented to the full ANC.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Handerhan,
Approve.
Commissioner Chauvin,
I approve.
Commissioner Sycamore,
Downvote of my motion, I will approve.
Commissioner Lakatos,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinsick,
Yay.
Commissioner Trindade Duramo,
Yay.
Commissioner Fields,
Yay.
Commissioner Harris, yay. Commissioner Jones.
Yay.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, commissioners. Okay, Commissioner Lakatos, moving on to your other updates.
Just that our next meeting is Wednesday, October 23rd at 7 p.m. We'll be discussing the Ward 1 Green Slow Streets program in relation to LaJoy Park. And that, again, to emphasize, there will be a meeting, our November meeting, which is you can register for at anc1b.org, where we will discuss the Vermont Avenue Protected Bike Lane project. So I will continue to send emails to folks about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fields, ABR.
Yes. So thank you guys so much for, making it through that. At this time, I'd love for us to move on to the one topic for ABR that we've reviewed over the past couple of months, which is a settlement agreement for Creighton Corner. So this is the location at Florida Ave and 7th Street, right there on the corner. And this is again a medical cannabis license. Myself and Commissioner Commissioner Chauvin have discussed the matter, and so I believe we're ready to bring it to a vote for ANC 1B to enter into a settlement agreement with the entity. But before I call a motion, I just wanted to ask if there are any other concerns that you guys believe needs to be addressed.
Not seeing any. Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Just real quickly, the reason we're having the settlement agreement, what was the purpose of it with the owner for the cannabis?
Well, he's applying for a medical cannabis license, so we just do it in good faith. And we did move to protest, but now in lieu of going through the full formal process, we're just going to enter into a settlement agreement with both parties in good faith. So at this time, I move to enter into a settlement agreement with the Creighton Corner.
Do we have a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Discussion. This is a settlement agreement. We're not entering into a settlement agreement. You already have a settlement agreement signed.
We do. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure that is then sent to the commission, myself, mainly because I need to also sign it, but I wanted to clarify that it wasn't entering. We have already entered. It just is voting for the ANC approval, right?
Yes, that's correct. But I think at the last meeting, Commissioner Chauvin moved to have his signature on the final
It is,
settlement.
it needs to be signed by the SMD commissioner and the chair of the commission.
Okay.
Commissioner Jones.
Could you briefly, I know there was some interest in this the last time we talked about it. Could you briefly describe what you think the most important parts of the settlement agreement are? And I don't want to like run us through the time, but just like either display it on the screen or give us like the highlights in no more than 2 minutes of what the most important parts in your view, Commissioner, feels of the settlement agreement are. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is the traditional settlement agreement. No changes have been made at all. So this is the one that we use for Firehouse. Just some top points that we have are, ensuring that they mitigate noise, clean up trash, and maintain safety within the area. The only thing that we noted again on the last call was that there's a separate business that's at the front that plays music. But with the requirements for medical cannabis licenses, there will be a wall put in place separating the cannabis shop completely from that front unit. So yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Thank you for that, Commissioner Kensick.
Yeah, actually, no, I do recall, actually, the owner was on the call, I believe, last meeting, and I think it's a good idea. Thank you, Commissioner Fields, for everything you did. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes with 7 yeas. 7? 8. Dear God. Commissioner Sycamore, there's 2 of you on here, if you can figure that out. Okay. Yays, please raise your hand. Settlement agreement passes unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Sycamore, there are 2 of you on here, and it just is a little confusing for me. Okay. Keep going, Commissioner Fields. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So our next meeting is October 16th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Everyone is welcome to attend to help us review upcoming licenses. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones, Economic Development, but I believe we have our community chair on to give us updates. So Elsa, if you can go ahead and promote Krishna. Krishna, can you raise your hand? Please, there we go. If you can go ahead and make him a panelist, just in case he needs to share his screen. Elsa, I think you may have promoted someone. Thank you. Krishna, you can go ahead and take yourself off of mute.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have a couple updates and one resolution for you all. First, I'm going to go kind of in reverse order here. First, most important thing, next meeting of the Economic Development Committee will be on October 17th at 6:30 p.m. I believe that Commissioner Jones will be continuing to be out of town, so I am planning to chair that meeting, and I will try to address some of the issues that we're going to hit there. At our last meeting, here's the important updates. We talked to DEMPED about the Reeves Center. Several of the commissioners got to talk with members of the DEMPED team. We had the specific DEMPED person, Vinita Fernandez, come in and give us a quick update on the timelines, on plans on the Reeves Center. At this point, it appears that their plans is to come to a land disposition agreement by the end of 2024, to vacate the existing building by 2025, and for groundbreaking / construction to begin at 2026. I'll just make it general comment that this has already been delayed. So I think let's keep those dates in that framework, that there may be changes to that in the future. Second big update, just on 1617, in September, the Zoning Commission had finally voted to support the proposed map amendment, and it will move it over to the Office of Zoning to issue the final order. That will most likely take 4 to 6 months. At our next upcoming meeting, we will be discussing the 1617. This is probably what I'm hoping will be a fairly minor technical discussion. There's actually 2 zoning cases, and with the changes, there's a little bit of confusion about how the proposed setback is going to work on the eastern side of the property. So the side that's currently facing the apartment building and the fire station. We've asked OP to come in and give us an explanation. We anticipate that they will be asking for an ANC motion on that. So we'll probably be coming back to you in the month after this meeting with something on that. The final point, again, just a heads up. One of the things the Economic Development Committee has been working on has been looking at vacant property. The belief is that that the DC Council will be voting and bringing up some vacant property legislation in sometime this fall, and we will probably be presenting a resolution to ask for full ANC approval on that within the next month or two, based on that legislation. So just to go on the resolution, and let me see if I can pull this up.
Are you a panelist?
I think I am a panelist, but you may have to walk me through this.
So go at the bottom, bottom toolbar, it should say share screen, and you should be able to share your screen at that point. Do you see the green share screen button? It's at the bottom toolbar.
I do.
Okay.
But the problem is, let's see if I can find. Okay, I need to open that up in Windows. You know, you're gonna kill me. I can't do this right now. So let me just very quickly walk through the resolution.
While you do that, Mr. Kumar, I will try to share the screen from my end.
Thank you. That would be appreciated. So the ANC Economic Development Committee has a number of discussions on the 600 block of T Street. One of the things, we've also had several discussions in the past about promoting safe drinking water and sanitation in the area. So at our latest meeting, we have proposed that we ask the DC Council that the 600 block of T Street be considered for locating a public toilet, something like the Throne project in that area. In the alternative, proposing that it be located at the 1400, 1500, or 1600 block of U Street. So it's a fairly simple resolution asking for support for a public toilet in one of those two areas. And yes, that is the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Are there any motions? Or is there a motion?
If I'm not sure if I'm entitled to make a motion.
You cannot, sorry, that was directed at commissioners. Or
Correct.
sorry, I would say, let me say this first. Are there any questions on this for Commissioner Jones or for Krishna? Okay, Commissioner Chauvin.
Yes, I have some deep concerns. First of all, I represent this area. This is my neighborhood. We have a dismal failure of policy of decades, dismal failure of deep failure of our government to work properly, deep failure of policing, and deep failure for help to properly address these issues. Every day, some of my the businesses in this area have human waste on their front walkway, and it's just disgusting. What do you do? Do you have to call, some hazmat? It's just a horrible situation. It's a horrible thing that's going on, and something needs to be done. I haven't had the opportunity to look at this because nobody wants this toilet near their home, and there's plenty of homes here. Nobody wants more congregation of the hundreds of destroyed lives that are continuing to destroy their lives at this corner. And my only concern, I like the concept and it's needed, but my concern is we haven't identified an area, and I believe that if anybody needs to identify an area, it's the ANC, because that means we're listening to business and the multiple residents, multifamily and single family homes that might have a toilet outside their front door. So that's my concern and my objection to reviewing and approving that this evening. I'd like some time to for the committee to think about and work with the community to decide where it might go, as so it doesn't it's not released from their hands, it's not released from our great weight, and then it's not the district saying, oh, this is where it's going, and we find out just because we allowed them or gave them great weight to proceed. So my concern is we haven't done the focus necessary with residents about where it goes in this evening. So I will be voting no until that issue is addressed.
And Frank, thank you. And just to clarify for everyone else, the language in the resolution, and I'll quote it, is location on or near the 600 block of T Street to be considered. So it is a very, as he points out, that is a very general concept and not a specific location.
Commissioner Jones, can you take this off of the screen? I think everyone has had time. Okay, Commissioner Sycamore.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what Commissioner Chauvin's concerns are. I also, there's so many proposals that are already going into this block. A dog park, a electric vehicle charging station, now possibly a public restroom. And I'm a little concerned because I don't believe anybody with a family will probably be using this, or a lot of people, a lot of neighborhood residents will be using this just because of the condition of the area. And while I believe that we all have a right to decent toilet facilities, there is a lot of concern about some safety issues there. And I would love to know if there's going to be any sort of mitigation issues as far as drug usage in there. So like putting in blue lights, for example, so it's hard for people to find veins, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make sure this doesn't become a cave for illicit either drug use or other illicit activities in that area. That's one of my biggest concerns. So I will be voting with Commissioner Chauvin on this one until some of these more pressing issues are addressed. Thank you.
Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Commissioner Trindade-Durama, can you please set the timer? Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Kinsick.
Thank you. Probably not a need for a timer, but since I have the extra time, why not? I'm going to concur with both Commissioner Chauvin and Commissioner Sycamore. I do believe everyone needs a place to use the bathroom. One of the things I worked with when I first came to the city was Department of General Services, and I saw the lack of communication between DC governments and how it works and who's going to be cleaning these facilities. And as to the points that Commissioner Chauvin brought up about the Central not really having a more of a precise location, like we might just put it around here. And then to Commissioner Sycamore's point, the fact that there is a lot going on in the area. We've been it seems like we've been talking about this area the last 3 or 4 meetings with the dog park, the electrical. It's just a lot to be thrown to people. I haven't really seen the couple of things that Commissioner or Councilmember Nadeau has created and how much success it's actually had. I know there's been great pictures taken with it, but I will be also not voting yes for this. Thank you.
Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in as well. I think that, this is very important. It's unfortunate that in the area that we live in, which is super high traffic, and is, visited often by people, that those who are homeless in this area are unable to use the restroom in a safe place. Many of the businesses require that you pay or purchase an item to use the restroom, and that should be a basic human right. So for that reason, I'll be voting in favor of this initiative.
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go to Commissioner Henry.
Oh, I'll go super quick. Kind of a question. Do we know what the businesses support in this area when it comes to the throne?
Commissioner Jones or Krishna, do you have?
I don't, we have not spoken to enough businesses for me to say with great certainty.
Okay. I think that'd be an important question. I think a lot of the comments that have been said about who uses the restroom potentially is accurate. From the business owners I've talked to, my understanding is that this would be well received, although with trepidation, given some of the concerns that were raised. But I do think there's not a ton of residents on this block. We want to keep the businesses there, and if they are in support of this, I would be in support of this. I'm probably going to abstain because I think this is a good idea, but I want to be cognizant of Commissioner Chauvin being the commissioner of record here. But we've said before, like, this block needs kind of us to throw everything at it. So I don't have a problem with a bunch of different things that we are advocating for there, because it's really complicated and one single thing isn't going to make a difference. So I am in favor of this concept, but until we get a location, I'm comfortable abstaining.
Am I still
on mute?
Hold on, I'm sorry, you're not on mute, but 1 second, Krishna. Abstaining means not voting at all. If you're in favor of something, you should vote in favor of it. I just want commissioners to recognize that.
No, I don't think that's totally accurate. I think I can abstain for whatever reasons I want to abstain.
We're allowed to abstain,
for
but I'm saying
process
that's not voting. That's what abstaining is.
I am well aware what abstaining is, and I think I'm abstaining because of the process concerns.
Krishna, go ahead.
Yeah, just 3 quick points here. Commissioner Sycamore, in terms of your question on sort of restrictions, so what we're asking for is another use of the throne. My understanding, and please don't quote me on this, is this is a system that requires you to use sort of a cell phone to get inside of it. And it's actually been criticized by some advocates that it is too restrictive. But that is a minor detail which needs to be resolved. Commissioner Handrahan, in terms of businesses, as Commissioner Jones says, no, there's been no outreach on that. In terms of location, to respond to Commissioner Chauvin, Commissioner Chauvin is a member of the Economic Development Committee. He was not able to attend the meeting where this was passed, just to clarify that for everybody. I think the point he brings up is a very valid point, which we all need to think about.
Okay, Commissioner Trindade Duraman. Commissioner Kinsick, we'll get back to you in the discussion.
I was going to move to amend this to add a clause about consulting with the ANC about precise placement, but I'm sort of sensing maybe the better move would be to postpone this for just now.
You don't
I don't
need to move to amendment. We don't have a motion on the table, so there's no amendment required. You can certainly ask Commissioner Jones or Krishna if that could be added to the draft resolution in front of us, but you don't need to make a motion for an amendment because we don't have a motion on the table.
Well, if there's no motion on the table, then I can't move to do anything to dispose of this. So what would you like me to do?
Well, you can ask if you want to add that amendment, or if you would like to make a motion to postpone this, you can also do that as well too.
I moved to table the resolution.
Table means, just so you know, tabling means there's no clear deadline for this.
That's fine.
So I would clarify that if you are postponing it, then make it clear of when you would like that.
I move to table the resolution.
Second.
Discussion. I'm letting you know when you say table, it means there is no clear sight of when this will come up again.
I'm comfortable leaving it in the discretion of the committee chairman to move it again.
Okay. Commissioner Kinsick. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. To Commissioner Field's point, if you're bringing up cell phones now too, I don't know too many homeless people that have cell phones. So that also seems like it's being very restrictive. But I'm definitely in favor of tabling this as well.
Commissioner Jones.
Thanks. There's more work to be done on this. It's clear that the commission would like some more of the details worked out. I strongly prefer at this point for us to send this back to the committee for more details. There's a lot of other details about the benefits and drawbacks of the Throne program, but for the sake of everybody's time, it's already clear that we need more time on this. So I would like us to just go ahead and table this so that the committee can work on it a little further. Thank you.
Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so I know, again, to what Commissioner Kinsick said about phoneless entry, but they do offer tap cards that can be used to access the system as well too. They also have smart security features and remote monitoring that could be 24/7, an anti-loitering system that moves people along effectively. So I understand that we could possibly be moving this back to the committee, which, is fine. I think, more time always helps, but just for us to consider like what's offered with a program like this in this area. And then lastly, I know there were concerns from one commissioner about people using the restroom outside during certain events throughout the year. So I think this would, help with that greatly. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Thank you, Commissioner Fields. There are some service orgs use or give access to cards, but there has been a lot of feedback from community members around a public restroom, maybe in particular that area or other areas around. I would strongly urge the Economic Development Committee to do their homework on this, but I think when it does come before the commission again, I was prepared to vote in favor of this, but I will vote in favor of it in the future, even with more information. But I just know that there is a strong need for public restrooms. So I am hopeful that this will be brought again before the commission, hopefully next month.
Okay, commissioners, just to summarize, I just want to sort of write down what the three concerns here are, and I just want to make sure I got this right.
I'm sorry, can I cut you off for a second? I want to recognize Commissioner Chauvin, and then we can get back to you just so we can wrap it up, and then you can get the comprehensive thoughts.
I'm just adding to Mr. Kumar's list, and yeah, I was just texting somebody on this that a focus group of close by residents, the condominiums and the business, within a block or two. I mean, it needs to be a major invite to review people's feelings on this because there's activation pending, still under review in the mayor's office for the dog park, still under review in the mayor's office for the farmers market, and it shouldn't be sitting and placed in front of where the farmers market's going. So quite a bit of concerns that need to be delicately addressed with the proper feedback. So thank you. I agree, sending it back to the committee to do that outreach and focus group. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Sycamore.
Like to call the question.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we're voting on this. And Krishna will get you the feedback via email.
Yeah.
So the motion has been moved and seconded to postpone this to not to postpone, excuse me, to table this to send it back to economic development. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The yeas have it. Okay. Moving on. Krishna, next.
Madam Chair, I think that Mr. Kumar has been de-paneled.
He has not. He's still on, but I think he's frozen.
Oh, I apologize. I see him now.
Yeah.
Yep. And that I think should conclude the reports of the Economic Development Committee. As I said, our next meeting will be next Thursday.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the updates, and we'll get you the feedback.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch with a couple of the individual commissioners on this to sort of get a little bit more color on some of that feedback.
Thank you. Next, public safety, Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so we actually had a very great meeting this past Tuesday. We discussed doing some projects at the Rita Bright Center for gardening. So coming up, we'll probably request funding on that. We did not meet in September, and unfortunately, we did not receive a sponsorship application from Vita Dance Company. So that could also be a next agenda item for us next month. But we did have a community meeting in September, and I did not request funding for printing materials, but we did ended up having a cost for that of $55. So I did email the receipt to Treasurer Lakatos, and I wanted to just make a formal motion for a reimbursement for printing materials associated with our community meeting in September.
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Chauvin.
Just a question on the report and safety committee. I've had concerns since I stepped on this commission.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Chauvin. Is this in regards to the motion for reimbursement on the printing materials?
I'm sorry. I will refrain and reintroduce after the motion. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the reimbursement for printing materials associated with the community meeting? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The yeas have it. 8, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, 1 not voting.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner Chauvin. I understand you have some concerns, but there are just 2 more things that we would need to vote on. So if we can go to those first and then go to the concerns, I'd appreciate that. So also in September, we approved funding for a community yoga event that we've been holding at the YMCA. Unfortunately, we didn't get it scheduled within the month. So I just want to, provide clarity and information to commissioners, and then formally request that $80 be rolled over to an event that could occur in October, since that was never used. So at this time, I move for $80 in funding for a community yoga event at the Anthony Bowen YMCA.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes with 7 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention, 2 not voting.
Okay. Sorry, the last thing slips my mind. I think those were the 2 things that we needed to vote on. So Commissioner, yeah.
There is one other item on here that says potential sponsorship review for Vita Dance Company.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Chair. Can I please have a roll call on that last with the non-votings and the no's or whatever? I'd like to hear a roll call on that. Thank you.
Okay. Let's pay attention to the votes when we have it. The 7 yeas were myself, Commissioner Chauvin, Commissioner Fields, Commissioner Trindade Duramo, Commissioner Handerhan, and I believe yourself. There were 0 nays, there was 1 abstention from Commissioner Sycamore, and then I did not get a vote from Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Lakatos.
Okay, thank you. Please note when you're saying something like, please pay attention, I see 4 people on the side of my screen. I don't see everyone, so I can't pay attention to who's raising their hand and who's not. So let's just keep that in mind when we're making comments like
I
that.
can keep that in mind, but I also read out the number of the vote. I know I can do a better job at that, but I'm not required to then read out the roll call, especially for a vote like this, unless there is a roll call vote called. Please continue, Commissioner Fields. Are we discussing the potential sponsorship review for Vita Dance Company, or is that not going to be discussed?
I wanted to know who was voting for what. That's what I was asking. Thank you, Chair.
So Vita Dance Company, they haven't gotten back to us on that, so we're good to, wait and postpone that for next month.
Okay, Commissioner Chauvin, what comment do you have?
I'm actually
When you said, thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm actually retracting. I'm good for the night. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. We do review stats at our meetings and occasionally have the presence of MPD. So if you're ever interested in that, I welcome you to join our calls, and we're actually gonna, try to ramp up some outreach efforts to local youth in the area that have been charged with crime or been known to terrorize the area in some way, shape, or form. We know that's not all teens, but we do want to make sure that we're investing in building a stronger community here in 1B. So our next meeting will be November 9th. Sorry, this is October. I'm on the wrong calendar. November 12th at 7 p.m. on a Zoom call. So please feel free to join. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones, ZPD.
Thank you. The ZPD committee did not meet in September because the one applicant who we had on the agenda asked for more time. So instead, I will give a preview of what will be on the agenda in the October meeting. So the one applicant that needed more time is the Howard University Hospital redevelopment. This is, again, a proposed map amendment or zoning change for a large stretch of land that's mostly not in the area of DC represented by ANC 1B. It's mostly in the area represented by ANC 1E, but it is somewhat within and adjacent to other parts of the area represented by 1B. I'm grateful for the work that the Detroit Park Civic Association has been doing. They've engaged in a lot of extremely detailed discussion with Howard, and in fact, that is why they asked to postpone, is to address some final details that they hope that they can then get the Detroit Park Civic Association with approval with. So that's the first item that we anticipate talking about at the ZPD meeting. The next item is related to the Christian Tabernacle Church at 2033 11th Street Northwest. That's they're looking for a Board of Zoning Adjustment application. They're looking to their minor changes to the Board of Zoning adjustment. Let me say, there will need minor exceptions in order to move forward with a project involving 7 stories of affordable housing and a new daycare center. I would encourage the commission this evening not to get into substantive discussion on those items right now, because the questions that you have will not be able to be answered at this meeting. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in those topics, to go to the next meeting of the ANC 1B ZPD committee. That next meeting is going to be on Monday, the October 21st at 6:30 p.m. I am currently overseas for on a work assignment. And so knowing that this is an important discussion that needs someone who is in a correct time zone, I have asked Vice Chair Larry Handerhan to volunteer chair and interim chair for this meeting, especially because he is the commissioner who represents LaDroit Park and some of the surrounding area. And he has detailed knowledge of some of the ongoing discussions about the Howard University Hospital site. That's all I've got. Again, the next is October 21st at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. Check out on our website. Commissioner Handerhan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones, for all your work here. I'm not going to get into substance per your recommendation, but we do have the LaDroit Park Civic Association does have an MOA that they have agreed to with the Howard University Hospital, which we'll be talking about at the meeting. I'm just waiting for the formal signatures, and then I will send it to all commissioners so everyone has that both well in advance of the 21st, and if you can't make it on the 21st, so that you will have plenty of time to digest what's in there before our November meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Administrative commission meeting scheduled for the remainder of the calendar year. So we have 2 remaining meetings for the rest of the year. We have been discussing briefly, I can't remember how many people were on this email, but having a hybrid meeting for November. I believe that is still in discussion. But just wanted to quickly gauge interest here about that. I'm assuming we would want to have maybe a hybrid meeting. We would likely have it at Housing Finance. So if I'm not hearing anything, I'm assuming that that works for commissioners here. Again, it is hybrid, so there will be a virtual option as well. So we will, as soon as we secure the location, we will publish that, but anticipate for our November meeting, which is, can someone remind me the date? I believe it's November 7th. I just looked. We will have that then, and then our last meeting of 2024 will be December 5th. So we have 2 more. Yes, we have 2 more. Today is October. We have 2 more meetings. We also have an administrative, we have SOP review, but I believe we are going to push that to the next meeting. That does not require a motion, just because it's late and a lot of us have been on for a long time. I appreciate the community members who have. So we will be looking at our standard operating procedures next meeting. So moving forward, executive, council member, commissioner, and community announcements, office of the council member, Nicole.
Everyone, good to see you all. So a few quick updates from our office. Councilmember Nadeau attended an oversight hearing earlier this week on the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or ONES. It was convened because of the allegations of bribery that involved Life Deeds, violence interruption organization, doing work in Ward 1 and elsewhere across the city. We heard really compelling testimony from violence interrupters about the impact of the work they're doing. And Councilmember Nadeau asked about the challenges that they face with ONES. One of the biggest that was raised was lack of vision at the agency, with a lot of reports that, roadmaps have been created by various groups and ONES seems to not really be following them. The council member really made clear that the problems with one violence interruption program do not represent violence interruption work overall. Some really great work is happening in DC with very real results, but more oversight is clearly needed. The council member is also asking questions about who's going to take over the work that Life Deeds was doing in Ward 1 when their contracts conclude on October 31st, and what that transition will look like. So as we learn more, we will share with the community as soon as we have more information to share about what that will look like. Some other big news out of our committee. We are conducting an investigation of the ride-hailing app Empower. The Public Works and Operations Committee authorized an investigation last month. They operate in DC and they do have lower prices than other apps like Uber and Lyft, but that's for a reason, because the app has not registered with the Department of For-Hire Vehicles, which Councilmember Nadeau oversees as part of the Public Works and Operations Committee. Empower has racked up tens of millions of dollars in fines, and we've heard reports of health and safety risks, including allegations of stalking, harassment, and impaired driving. Right now, riders have no guarantee that they can hold Empower accountable if something were to go wrong in a ride, and we have no way of knowing if Empower drivers have been properly vetted because they're not registered with the city. So the investigation will examine the extent of Empower's violations and the impact of their continued operation on riders, operators, and the for-hire vehicle industry as a whole. The council member also participated in a hearing on failures at the Office of Unified Communications, or OUC. That's the agency in the district that operates our 911 and our 311 systems. The council member continues to make this a priority. We hear from constituents all the time about problems with the 911 dispatch center, taking forever for someone to answer, dispatching to the wrong addresses, and other problems. The tech outages have also been a significant issue. The bottom line is that even after several high-profile incidents and clamoring from residents and demands from the council, the executive branch does not appear to have a sense of urgency to fix OUC. So the CM is very pleased that Councilmember Pinto and the Public Safety Committee are holding these oversight hearings. So we look forward to a joint hearing of the Public Works and Operations Committee and the Public Safety Committee this fall to talk about the tech outages. So our committee oversees OCTO, and what role do they play in all of this? One thing that we're really stressing is that tech outages are problematic, but the problems at OUC are much bigger, longstanding, and systemic. So we really have to be looking at all of the solutions that are on the table and all of the issues holistically to improve the system. I will just flag that our next Brianna on Your Block, which is the opportunity for any constituents to come by and speak with the council member one-on-one about anything you want to talk to her about. It's going to be Tuesday, October 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. At Sunny's Pizza. That's at 3120 Georgia Avenue. So we hope to see some folks there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Sycamore.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for being patient with us tonight. Just a quick question. I work all over the city, and I've actually never seen a violence interrupter. I've worked in all 8 wards in the years that it's been around. Do we have any measurable numbers that are not just platitudes of good work from the council member? And if not, why? Because it just seems like we're just kind of flushing money down the toilet. We don't have any measurable numbers other than just good work.
So you probably wouldn't see a violence interrupter, right? They're not necessarily walking around with, high-vis vests on or uniforms like the police do. They work in communities that see regular, especially crew-based violence and neighborhood-based violence, and they're working kind of behind the scenes with the people that we know could be committing violence. Like, for example, if there's a shooting, they're talking to folks that might end up being involved in retaliation for that shooting to get them to put down the gun. They're not folks that anyone who don't know them and aren't part of that community might just be able to pick out on the street. There are data dashboards for the work that they've done. I'm happy to send those to you because there is data tracking the interactions that they're having and how they're working in community and what they're accomplishing. It's not just us saying there's great work being done. There is data. So I'm happy to send those links over to you.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Just to be clear, I do work with vulnerable communities in specifically Ward 7 and 8. So, and they have also, I've talked to them about violence interrupters. I just haven't seen anything like that. So, and they have not seen it either. They've been victims of violence and domestic abuse as well. So if you could send those over, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to get more information from you about where folks might need to see some violence interruption work and see where we can direct resources. So where you're not seeing them, I'd love to know more.
Sounds great. We'll talk offline. Thank you.
Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so just circling back on my email about the U Street Parking Performance Program and specifically how it will affect my constituents, and specifically on 14th and B Street. So just looking at which areas will be for residents only for 24 hours and which one will be open to the public.
Yes, I have an email into DDOT and let me follow up on that to try to get you an answer because I know that that has been pending and I apologize for that. So let me see what
Thank you so much.
for you.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm not seeing any further questions. Although Ms. Karen Gall asked if you can place the links to, I believe, those trackers into the chat if you can, or if not, we can share them out.
Yeah, if I don't pull them up by the time this meeting concludes, I will send them over via email. Ms. Gall, I do have your email, and then any commissioners can send them out to their lists as well.
Okay, thank you. Office of the Mayor, Anthony.
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing tonight? I have a few announcements from the mayor's office. I tried to drop this into the chat. I don't know if I successfully did that. Did this PowerPoint go into the chat?
Can you just go ahead and share it again, please?
Yes. Okay.
You could share his screen if there's a PowerPoint that he wants to put up. I think.
Oh, a PowerPoint. Sorry, I misheard. Yeah, you can share your screen and then it's just the bottom toolbar that says share screen, and then you should be able to share.
Let me see. Is that it? Did I do it?
You did not.
I did not. Hold on. Give me a sec.
It might take a moment.
Okay, so share.
There we go. It's coming
Yeah.
up. Yep.
Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. Thank you. I was a little, let me get this right. All right, here we go. All right. I have a few announcements from the mayor's office. This is, let me get that. It is leaf season of approaching. Leaf season going to start officially on October the 28th to February the 8th. Now, 2 weeks prior to that, starting October the 14th, which will be next week, everybody will start receiving, it's going to start in Ward 1. You'll start 2 weeks before the date. You will start to see flyers and posters on their doors, and they will be passing it out. And we also have, excuse me. Okay, we also have snow season is around the corner also. So if you have someone that wants to volunteer to help out, they are more than welcome to do so. And this also here, let me get down. I'm sorry. And this is for anyone in the community that wants to be able to contact any of the agencies that have follow any questions that they have that they can want answers to. They can follow up. And also this weekend on the 13th on Sunday, we're doing a cleanup in Leroy Park. Everybody's welcome to come out. And if you have a cleanup that you want to do in your neighborhood, please feel free to reach out and we can organize something for anybody's neighborhood. And that is it from the mayor's office. And I'm gonna try to drop this in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you can drop it in the chat, that would be great. Or if you send it to us, then we can share it. Are there any questions for Anthony? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Commissioner announcements. Are there any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, it's just more of a community announcement. We know we have people have probably started receiving some ballots in the mail. We have voting season coming up. Date is November 5th. We do have early voting from October 28th to November 3rd in Ward 1. The areas are on 10th and U. I don't want to missay or say the wrong name, but I actually met you there, Chair Harris, that time. That same location, and then also in Columbia Heights. So besides having the actual 5th, you actually could have received something like this in the mail starting 2 weeks ago, but you also have early voting as well. So please make sure you vote. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner Kinsick. And you don't need to vote in the ward that you live in. You can vote at any location for early voting and on the day of. Okay, are there any other commissioner announcements? Okay, hearing none, are there any community announcements? Seeing none, is there any new business? Okay, are there any further comments? Hearing none, and with that, I adjourn this meeting at 10:07 p.m. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.